Okay, we are good, Mayor.
Great. Wonderful. Good evening, everybody, on this wonderful Pacific Northwest spring. Never know what we have today. I welcome you to the City of Clyde Hill City Council meeting on Tuesday, April the 12th, 2022. Again, we are holding our council meeting virtually. We're still in the pandemic, coming off of what I would say is the BA2 surge. So it's still kind of providing a little bit of excitement for most of us. So I welcome you all to our meeting. I call us to order. John, how are we with our roll call?
We have all 5 council members present and accounted for.
Outstanding. Okay, so what we'll do next is I will share my screen, have you stand where you are, and we will recite a Pledge of Allegiance. There we go. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Perfect. Thank you all. That will take care of my skill set of sharing a screen. Perfect. Reset my screens here. Wonderful. All right. So you have all the information about our process for participation. Again, the best way to get attention is to raise the hand, which I see Dean H's hand up there. And if you, at the next section here, when we come up on public comment, I see that we have a lot of our residents in attendance. That's great. If you can't find it, have difficulty, just come off mute and get our attention. Dean H, question, comment?
Oh, I was trying to get in there on approval of agenda.
Oh, you're being proactive. Thank you so much. Okay, hold that thought. Hold that thought. Okay, seeing that, we'll go ahead now on to section 2, which is consideration of motion to approve the agenda for April 12th. Still up for it, Dean?
Yeah. I was going to ask for a couple of changes.
Okay.
Councilmember Jones and I talked about moving item 10 to be just after item 6 to front load those discussions, please.
All right.
I also wanted to pull out item 6.2, April's bills from the consent agenda for discussion, please.
Okay.
I would like to remove item 10.3, the emergency ordinance that we discussed earlier.
Remove the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see what people say.
Okay.
And last is just a reality check. At the study session, the city administrator asked for feedback from council about code enforcement complaints. Council member Friedman and I put some comments together. I'm just checking, is the place for that during the discussion of the complaint report or elsewhere, or do we need an explicit item? I'm asking to make sure we don't get.
That would be a great part. We can make sure we bring it in there. Thank you.
That's all I got. Thank you.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on those proposed changes to the agenda? All right, all those in favor of these amendments, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Then the amended agenda will pass. And anything further on the agenda, any other motions? There we go. I see you now, Bruce. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't realize it was behind the curtain.
All right. So we've approved the amended agenda for April 12th. So we will take action accordingly. Okay. Wonderful. Now we move on to section 3, which is our non-agenda public comment section. We don't have any public hearing slated for tonight, so this can be whatever our residents wish to make commentary of. And I'm going to go over here. John will help me as well. And I ask that you can find the little raise the hand under the reactions tab at the top, and be happy to let you have your moment. Again, around 3 minutes, give or take. And hopefully we'll just have good, respectful commentary. This is your chance to talk. We don't really kind of get into answers and Q&A. We just listen attentively and take to heart what you are sharing with us. Having said that, I will start. And first up is Spencer Nurse.
I don't think my camera's working, so.
Okay.
But
we can hear you though.
Yeah, good. My name's Spencer Nurse. My family has lived in Clyde Hill and on Clyde Lane for 70 years. For several reasons, we and other residents are very concerned with the emergency ordinance of 17.08.105. What is the emergency here? We don't see the emergency, with 4 outstanding complaints, none of which will be affected by this ordinance. When speaking to the community, staff, council, everyone is very confused. Does this put a moratorium on enforcement? Does this allow people to install gates and hedges on property lines of right-of-way that the staff has said would be grandfathered in? It places public safety decisions in the hands of private individuals, allowing them to self-police for ingress, egress, and safety. We've witnessed several scenarios in the neighborhood where homeowners have refused to act in trimming trees, vegetation, not maintaining emergency access at the expense of neighbors and life safety. It has been only when the city has stepped in to protect the welfare of its citizens did people act. Both consultant Blue Line and staff have suggested this is not a good idea. What other sections of the code are being replaced by Section 5 of this emergency ordinance that residents don't see? Has anyone had the time to and done the full forensic scrub of Title 17 to see what else is being repealed by this emergency ordinance? Voting yes and passing this in haste creates liability for the city, and there has been no public outreach. It's confusing. Why? Why would this process be so rushed and not go through the normal course of public comment and the Planning Commission? We all know once an ordinance is on the books, it's very difficult to change. Take the time to do it right. Let it go through the proper process. Sadly, this draft is costing taxpayers thousands of dollars for a less safe city. In this circumstance, to use emergency to circumvent the normal public process would be very unfortunate. Please vote no. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Spencer. Appreciate that. You can lower your hand. And I'll wait patiently to see if there's anybody else from our public that wishes to make a comment. It's the one positive thing I think about the virtual end is that we do get people listening in, even if it's just to observe. So thank you. Going once, twice. No more hands going up. All right, then listen in. Appreciate your participation that way. We are done with section 3. We will now move on to section 4. We have a guest. I'll let Dean introduce her. I had a chance to listen in. I know we only have 15 minutes for this agenda, so I think she's going to quickly give you a sense of the fire department and, more importantly, what will be the transition work as we want to make sure that our city is being well covered and attended to while we are in the middle of all the throes of it all. So Dean, any further intro before we hand it over to Janine?
Sure, real quick, Mayor, thank you. Janine Laughlin is the Facilities Planning and Development Project Manager Supervisor for the City of Bellevue. She is one of the key committee members in who we are meeting with Bellevue as it relates to the Fire Station 5 replacement project. And she has a really nice presentation just to kind of bring you up to date on what the station is going to look like, as well as some news updates as far as timelines and relocations of stuff. So Janine, floor is yours. You should be able to share your presentation. Thank you for coming, for sure.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to share our exciting project with your council. I did snoop around last week and listened in on your discussion about the development agreement, as well as what the existing station parcel will look like when we turn that back over to the city of Clyde Hill. This is a presentation that was given last week by Deputy Chief Dickerboom with the fire department and myself to the Points communities to kind of kick off the public outreach on the project. I'm going to go through it rather quickly, but if there's any questions, we can address those. Dean has the presentation so that you can look at it later for a little bit more in-depth. And if there's any follow-up, we're certainly willing to meet with you or do a study session, whatever you need. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about the fire station. Those of you who've been in Clyde Hill for some time know that the building needs to be replaced for a whole bunch of different reasons. And it was earmarked in 2014 in the facilities master plan that was key in getting fire levy passed in Bellevue to replace aging infrastructure like Fire Station 5, as well as to build a new station on just the north end of downtown Bellevue, Fire Station 10, which filled a gap in our operational response area. Fire Station 5 currently has 3 shifts of 3 people who man engine 105, and they respond to medical emergencies as well as fire and any other types of response in the Clyde Hill area, the northern northwest Bellevue area, as well as the Points communities. This is really hard to see, but I know you looked at it last week. The existing fire station sits here. Through the land swap agreement with Clyde Hill, we'll build the new station on the existing low-income housing rental property that Clyde Hill has, and the operations court, as we call it, where the vehicle apparatus will return, be able to fuel up. Firefighter parking will be on the half-leased parcel that will also be part of that agreement. And then this piece over here we're showing as a just restored, everything removed, grassed, kind of leaving some of the trees, but that is totally up to Clyde Hill as to how that property gets turned over to you for your best and highest use. It's hard to see these, but this is the their apparatus bay and then the different operational areas for the station. It's being built to the same design standard as Fire Station 10, so it will meet the official essential facilities criteria as far as earthquake standards, 100-year design upgrades on all of the structural and mechanical systems. It'll have an uninterrupted power supply system for critical infrastructure so that it can work in the event of something slightly less than Armageddon. City of Bellevue has an aggressive environmental stewardship initiative program that was adopted last year. So this building will be designed to a LEED certified building status. We're currently targeting silver. We targeted silver on Fire Station 10, and when we were all done, it ended up being close to it probably will be gold. It'll have geothermal heating and cooling, salmon safe construction certification. The systems have been designed and the layout of the facility to reduce energy. And we have a lot of safety features for firefighter health and wellness, such as sensitive design for nighttime alerting, which is a fancy way of saying red lights. The facility will be 2 stories in order to fit it on the property that we have. It's broken into different areas. There's operations areas, which include the apparatus bay, which is considered the hot or dirty zone, red. And then we have operations areas where we get into gear storage and decontamination, where we start to go to yellow. And then the public and shared living areas and working areas are all green, so that our firefighters and anybody that comes in from the public aren't exposed to the contaminants inside all of the smoke and junk that comes back on the apparatus from a response to a situation. This is the artistic rendering of what the station would look like if you were standing probably in the middle of 24th. Public service announcement. This is not exactly what the station will look like when it's done, but our hope is that it will blend in with the other government buildings, City Hall that's there and the school behind it. We're trying to preserve as many of the trees as we can so that it can continue to fit the neighborhood, trying to use as much brick so that we can preserve the existing history of the fire station as it currently is. This is looking from the intersection, the corner house. I don't know why they didn't put a garage door in there, but it shows sort of the size and the massing, that though we are going for design variances on height for different things, it's not as though it's a 7-story building that's going to tower over the existing residences that are there or City Hall. This would be from the back, looking from the elementary school. You can see the hose drying tower, which doubles as a training facility, and then the communications antennas that are again above the height requirements. We would have fuel island and all of the ancillary regulatory requirements that go with that. This would be looking at from standing sort of in the front of your existing City Hall. This would be the new station. This is where the existing station is seated, and that would be, as I said, restored back to whatever the requirement is from the city of Clyde Hill as part of the development agreement. This little closer, you can see the fueling canopy in the back, lights that are similar to what we have in the area in the school, and just sort of an inviting landscaped area as folks would be able to walk along. The project was originally scheduled to go to construction simultaneously with Fire Station 10. Fire Station 10 has been delayed due to COVID and a bunch of permitting issues with our own jurisdiction, trying to get it through. And so looking at the response issues and how we can no longer construct the new station with the existing station in operation. So we had to look at how would we be able to respond to emergencies in the Clyde Hill and Points communities neighborhoods. And so we were looking at the best way to do that. Would it be out of Fire Station 1, or what we've decided to do is tether the construction of Fire Station 5 to 10. So 10 is over-designed. It's designed for a ladder company to come in 2032-ish. And so all of the offices for those staff, as well as the bunk rooms, will be available for apparatus and staff at night. So the plan is to overnight or dorm the Fire Station 5 staff and equipment at Fire Station 10, and then have them respond out of the existing Clyde Hill area. We're currently looking at the Northwest Art Center to respond out of during the day. And so that would push construction out until probably Q1 of 2024. We're targeting a Q3, Q4 turnover to fire of the fire station. We are trying to get out to bid here the beginning to middle of May of this year. We won't know for certain until we get a general contractor on board what their schedule will be, but we'll adjust that and keep you guys in the loop on that. And we have what we anticipate will be the full year of property discussions, documents going back and forth, and then the development agreement. And then once we get those documents executed, public hearings held that need to happen for both your council and ours. Then we'll go into construction documents phase, which is a fancy way of saying detailed design that gives us the drawings and the technical specifications to be able to go out to bid. And then we'll have a significant amount of time for relocation as well of the existing folks. If we're able to use the Northwest Art Center, I've got to do some renovations to the little house that's there for them during the day and figure out a way to have a temporary shelter for the vehicle so that it's not damaged or anything stolen off of it while it's there. So why did we end up with Fire Station 10 instead of Fire Station 1? Our predictive software tracks existing calls. We've looked at a time period from November of 2019 through October 31st of 2021. As we get closer to actual construction and opening of Fire Station 10, we will run that again. But in that time period, there were 2,221 service calls out of Fire Station 5, and looking at each of the different areas that breaks down to, Clyde Hill had 390 of those. This is a little hard to see, but this graphic shows you for each day of the week and in a 24-hour period the number of calls. So our predictive software allows us to anticipate trends and look at different times of day and whether or not the service coming out of Fire Station 10 versus Fire Station 1 would give us the best response times. We try to have a response and have personnel on site within 4 minutes, and I've got a graphic that'll show you a little bit of that. It also shows us what the top response addresses were. So there were 14 addresses, 14 incidences at the single residence right there on 24th. And then, so we looked at those versus at Station 10 versus currently at the Art Center. So it would be 1.8 miles to respond from Fire Station 10 versus 0.3 miles at the Art Center. Unfortunately, we're not able to dorm at the Art Center. And then there's a breakdown for each of the points communities. Hunts Point had 98 responses, and you can see the times of day when they had theirs. Medina had 406, Yarrow Point 172, and so they also had 21 incidences at the same address. So this is the current as it exists today. This purple is Fire Station 5, and where its response area is within 4 minutes. So 4 minutes from the time a call comes into the NORCOM system, that's where they can reach using current apparatus. And the red down here is out of Fire Station 1, and you can see they just kind of barely touch one another in a 4-minute response. When Fire Station 10 comes on, it's going to be this yellow area, and you can see how much of Fire Station 5 it already will have duplicate coverage, and so that gave us a better sense of comfort that we would be able to respond in the same amount of time to Fire Station 5 if we were coming out of Fire Station 10 at night. So you have a faster response. We're in the process of as I said, Fire Station 10 is over-designed. It will have Medic 101, which is an advanced life-saving support vehicle. It's currently housed at Overlake Hospital on the east side of 405. It's been approved by the county to move to Fire Station 10, so it will actually be even closer to Fire Station 5 service area. And then Fire Station 10 will have its own aid car, which will have basic life support, and that will allow for quicker response out of 10 as well for those types of calls. So again, you have aid car 101 for advanced life, medic 1 for basic, that will be out of 10 at night. When we were running the time responses, we were doing it real time during the day, and we weren't using the GPS preemption program that the vehicles are all outfitted with, that changes all of the signals to green and allows them to go through. So we expect that the response times will be will be good and fairly close to what they are now, and they'll be just almost identical from the art center during the day. I'm not going to get into a lot of why we picked 10. There's a lot of benefits to it. We can use state-of-the-art facility, and it will have all the gear storage, things that we can't put in a temporary facility during the day. So as you can see, this is the current Bellevue Art Center. This is the main community buildings. The little house that came with the property sits here. It's about 900 square feet. And we're looking at what renovations we would need to do for meal prep, for them to be able to shower and do laundry, and have offices where they can do their business and their paperwork, and still have folks be able to drop in and have their blood pressure checked and whatnot. I know that was really fast. There's a couple of YouTube video links that give the architectural fly-through of the station. So you kind of go through the front door and kind of see different aspects of what the station would look like. So I invite you to look at those when you have a moment. And are there any questions?
Yeah, we have Scott's hand's been up.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And it looks like it'll be a great design. My question is mostly around response times, just given the distance, and you touched on it a little bit, but have you calculated estimates? Because it's obviously quite a bit further away. It's going to be what, a year and a half of construction for the new Fire Station 5. I mean, what do you think the time frame is going to be to get to Clyde Hill, Yarrow Point, or Medina from Fire Station 10? How much more is that going to be from what we get now?
Good question. Some of the other folks, some of your counterparts at the other jurisdictions asked the same question. So Chief Dickerboom is actually going to run a little bit more analysis. They have these graphics for 6-minute response, 8-minute response, 10 minutes, to look at those, because there are some areas that even today out of Fire Station 5 are not reached in our 4-minute target, and take a little bit longer. So so I don't have exact times. I mean, things happen. You can have something just outside the station and you can't get to it because there's an accident in front of the apron. And so it's all sort of, predictive and what if, but it is something that we're definitely looking at, something we will keep track of. The Chief Dickerboom and I have been talking about, even during construction, we'll continue to look at the outlying areas, and if we need to have an ambulance or something that is staged with an extra night shift, that's all they do is they report to an area out here somewhere on the fringes to be able to make sure that we can respond, then we'll adapt for that. We'll have a couple of contingency plans that we can roll out as necessary. We've just started in January looking at the logistics of working out of Fire Station 10 and out of the Northwest Art Center. Initially, the plan had been to keep the station open during construction of the new station, and then we would demo it. As we started to creep into the edge of the existing station, here you can see where the new building, this dotted line here is the edge of the existing station. And so the footings and excavation and what we would need to do for the new station, as well as all of the ancillary, underground stormwater, the geothermal system and whatnot, it's just not possible. We looked at the possibility of demoing half the building and trying to keep the other half open. And such, the construction of the existing facility doesn't allow us to do that. This is probably the worst case scenario for us, is to actually have to have temporary operations somewhere else. We looked into building a temporary facility at the Northwest Art Center. We looked at what that would involve, and the way the code is written is pretty much you're building an entirely new station up to current code and everything, and then tearing it down or selling it off to somebody else. And so from a financial standpoint, it just didn't work out. And so we're still analyzing things. I know it's a long answer and may not be what you were looking for, but
Can I just ask a follow-up on that map you
sure.
showed, like the colors? Is it 4, 6, and 8 minutes? Is that what those three maps represent?
No, so these are all 4 minutes. This shows the existing condition today with Fire Station 7 here, Fire Station 1, and Fire Station 5. This one in the middle shows what the response area will be when Fire Station 10 opens in 2023.
Mhm.
And then this is the 4-minute response just for the aid cars and the medic. And they actually get to respond a little bit faster. The software has a penalty in time, if you will, for the larger apparatus because of their turning radiuses. They can't go as fast. They can't zip through traffic like an ambulance can. So, but that's what the 3 graphics are.
Thank you.
Great. Dean R.
Yeah, just super quickly, I wanted you to know that we put an abbreviated version of this up on it's attached to the agenda. As soon as I have, if I may even already have it, but if we have this version, I'll replace the one that's there with this one.
Very good. What other comments or questions? I'm going to assume, oh yeah, Dean H. I'm going to assume reading Scott's mind on this is that as we are actively utilizing these alternate locations, that we would be able to be given updates on what our response times are and any issues, just so that we have a sense of the impact to our community. Would that be fair, Janine?
Yes, it's something we're going to track. Like I said, during construction, this isn't one thing that just, oh, well,
Yeah.
that's not what we thought would happen. And so we're looking at a couple of, like I said, contingency plans, different things that we can do. We're hopeful that we'll be able to operate daytime out of the Northwest Art Center. And so our project, we had our consultant team stand down on the design until we got through the development agreement documentation and get that executed, as well as the land agreement, so that we don't have them just spinning on a design, not knowing what's going to happen with the variances. So, but that's one of the pieces that we are continuing to move forward with, is the public outreach, because of the alternative response during construction, as well as the logistics of whether or not we can operate out of the Bellevue Art Center, because if that's not an option, I have to find another place. So those 2 aspects are continuing to move along, even though the design is technically on hold.
Okay. Well, this won't be the last time we'll be talking. This is to kind of kickstart it and get us going. And I know from the study session last week is that we have development agreement, and there was an ask by the council for some information. And then we know, as stated here, we have public hearings to facilitate, and then some discussion on that temporary parcel of land. What do we want the final impact to be? So Dean R., I'm assuming that we'll probably have this on the agenda for May, and we'll just continue our work with that.
We will get after that as fast as we can. Yes.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, and
I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you inviting us in. Anytime, Dean and his team have been great to work with, and it's been a great partnership. And we hope that if there's any questions that come up or any documentation that you guys need, that you don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll make sure that you have what you need so that you can make decisions and we can have a good project.
Looking forward to it. All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you all. We will close that section and move on. We have some new business and discussion topics to go through. 5.1 is the celebration memo that you have there. This has an element of time constraints. We normally had usually tried to do this either like over a weekend or activities on a Saturday, but as cities are thinking they're going to do some level of reopening under pandemic situations, some of our first options have already been gobbled up. So Courtney has done a wonderful job, at least trying to pin down some options. You can see in the memo that we are looking at Friday, August 19, and we're looking at whether we can bring in a shredder, like we always have that mass community shredding opportunities. We wanted to look to see if we could do some outreach to our community. We'll talk with our Blue Line consultants on this. Might be a great opportunity, set up some tables, look at public input. It's just, we just have good opportunities. But the bottom line is that we can bring in the vendor to at least pick up where we left off with movie and a movie night, and we can choose a family oriented movie and encourage families to come out for the evening and watch the movies, hopefully under good sky, give them some popcorn, some water, and just kind of have an opportunity for community celebration. John, did I get that right? Because I know you're acting like Courtney, or is it Dinar? Dinar?
Yeah, it would be me.
Okay.
So she left me with some notes here from some of the field activities, in addition to what the mayor had discussed, like some things like the contractor would still provide some of these things, like some small mini golf things, some cornhole, some horseshoes, giant size Connect 4, giant size Jenga, with the activities starting around 5-ish. And with the things the mayor mentioned, as well as then having a movie start around, say, 8:30. The shredded truck, it does sound like it's not a 100% for sure, but it sounds like they could be, if not overlapping that time, it could be immediately preceding. So that looks like that's most of her notes on that.
So the bottom line is we wanted to get your input and I guess thumbs up, because this will run us around $10,000. And it's been budgeted, right, Dean and Lisa. But it's just a matter of for this time and place for what we can offer and get. Do we want to take advantage and start bringing some level of our Clyde Hill days back, and do it as safely as we can, not really truly knowing how it's going to be in August. So time's of the essence, so we can book them and not lose them. So that's the reason why we'd like to have your input. Any thoughts? Yes, no? Not now?
So I'll raise my hand virtually and then talk.
right.
So we're talking about not 2 days, but one. I mean, so everything is basically packed into a Friday night thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's good. I think we need to get back to some sense of normalcy. So I'm all in favor of moving forward.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth on this as I looked at it, and given it's August, that's a good evening. That's a good time to do it, weather-wise and warmth-wise for an evening. I haven't attended these. I'm so sorry I haven't in the past. What's been the attendance at the movie nights?
They've been pretty good. I've been to the last several and it's been around, I'd say 50, 75, Dean. I think that's a fair number, or John might know. I know Courtney would know off the top of her head.
This would be a John question.
Well, how does that compare to the next day?
Oh, well, when we had the jumpy jumps and the big rides and the hot dogs and all that stuff, that churned out a big attendance throughout the entire day. So, yeah, so this would just be, usually we had a smaller number that would come that Friday night for movie night, and then they would really enjoy the key activities during the day on Saturday. So it'll be noticeably different, yeah.
Well, and are you doing, I'm sorry, the questions, are we doing more on the Friday night with a few of those little things that you're bringing in that we would have done in the past, so you'll have a little better attendance?
We're trying to offset that we're not having all those jumpy jumps in the big rides and stuff to something that's COVID friendly right now. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that Jenga puzzle is COVID friendly, but it's fun.
You'll be wiped down.
Can imagine the whole council being part of it and somebody pulling it out. We'd all fall down together. Okay, yeah, I kind of agree with Kim. It's it's nice to have an event back and have it something for the community, and that's very family oriented. So I think I'm okay with that too.
Dean H.
I'm trying to understand how this event fits into the administration's plans and goals for community engagement. I looked around the website to find a plan of how do we think about engaging the community in Clyde Hill, and I didn't really see that. So I'm asking.
Right. So great question. And one of the items that is one of my biggest reasons for wanting to hold this year is to try and schedule this in through our planning consultant and their public outreach plan. We just got a copy of that real recently, and the plan for that was to bring it through the planning commission on the 28th and on that outreach program. But yeah, we're hoping to be able to get some booths set up, maybe some surveys, some different things, try and start that process to help formulate a vision for our city.
Okay, that's great. I'm asking something a little different. When we look at all the ways we try to engage the community over the year, whether it's pumpkins or this or all the other one-off events, is there an all-up plan for that has goals like we will have succeeded when the following is true after our community engagements?
Too soon for that, but sure, we don't have that plan yet.
Okay, so with that, I'm
it's-
going to go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's fair to say that we have our pockets of usual historic sort of events, but I know that when Dean and I were talking, we actually were hoping maybe to bring back even like an event committee. There used to be one decades ago, and that was membered by our residents, and they would come up with ideas and things that would be engaging for our community to participate in. So I think we have a lot of really good opportunity to make that happen, and then to make it be more definable so we can know whether was that good, do we want to run it again or not, and which I think is ultimately what you're getting at.
Right. Okay. So I understand where we are, and I'll defer to some of Mr. DiGiulio's previous guidance. This sounds like exactly what the administration is responsible for. The city council has set a budget, and the administration should go forth and do whatever it thinks is right with that budget for its goals.
Thank you. Any other comments? Making sure you've had a voice. All right. I think we have what we need, Dinar. So we will move forward then. We have then 5.2, and Sean, I think this is you.
Yeah, happy to have one of the council members also speak to it if they'd like. I prepared the memo though, and again, it seems like ages ago now that our little committee met, and we did make some progress, and we kind of came to some decisions on how to move forward with a lot of the 17th issues. So some of that's in play right now as far as a discussion about working to acquire a permanent easement. And so to that end, all of those property owners were given a notice. We asked for a right of entry form to be executed by them, so our survey could be collected for each of the subject parcels. So the survey actually should be out this week. I know that they're surveying some other small drainage programs projects right now, but 17th will be included in that survey effort. So as far as movement in Councilmember Cameron Friedman, I'd love to have you guys add if you'd like, but in summary, I mean, we came together, had a good discussion. I think we had general agreement on a direction, and then we're kind of moving forward already. So.
Mute off myself here. So the sub task force, everybody's A-OK. We're on track. Any comments or questions from the rest of the council here, and make sure that you're caught up to date? Thank you, Dean H.
Yeah, okay, ahead.
Nope, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was maybe this will help you, Dean. And I'm sorry I didn't put my hand up. It's up this way. Hey, Sean, why don't you inform us, give kind of a sense of what the next steps are after we do the survey, and provide that for the community?
Sure. So so the first step is doing what we do and getting some rights for access. The survey will be collected from that survey effort. We'll be able to produce, and I think title reports have already been pulled. So we'll look at title, we'll look at, and then we'll start creating exhibits. So the survey information will help kind of delineate the boundaries of the project. It'll identify any areas of need for the city if you were to go and build something along that alignment. And then again, we'll be able to start to identify exhibits for right of way or easement, permanent legal documents. So that will be something that has to be recorded with the county, and again has a very specific way it has to be prepared. So once we've identified the type of area that we would need to move forward a project, we can take that back to those property owners and then explain to them, here's the limits of the work, here's the influence that the project would have on your property on a temporary basis, not a permanent basis. And then that would be kind of a basis for discussion between the city and those private parties for whether or not we have agreement to move forward.
So at this point, we're obtaining the agreement of the property owners to look at the property and to get the legal rights to look at the property, and then to have them understand what we're going to accomplish to solve this problem.
Correct. Yeah, and then assuming everybody is amicable and things move forward, you know, we could do expedited easement recordings. I mean, it could go reasonably quickly if everybody is on the same page, and then we would continue to the design effort in general. So
and you might inform everybody where we are. There's no work yet done on the design efforts because we don't have the rights to go look at the properties.
Right. So the survey data is the basis for anything. So they collect physical locations in space and look at you know, the actual locations, and then they'll start to shoot grades and then determine what kind of level we need. So that's really the basis for the entire design is getting that survey information to see where you are. So and that task order is executed. So we have enough authorized funding and tasks to move forward with the design effort under existing authority, and then in what's already budgeted but not specifically allocated right now in the 2022 budget. That could change as we move forward and we start seeing the small drainage program go out to bid. If it beats 17th, or if it comes in sometime before, we'll start to kind of nibble at what is allocated in that 2022 budget, and we'll have to make decisions down the road on, you know, budgetary wise or budget wise.
Okay, well, I'll let the other people talk now that I interrupted everybody, but I thought maybe the background would be helpful.
Yeah, you know the lineup where it's heading. Okay, I think Kim was next.
Yeah, and I think I want to make sure that council understands
that. Oh, did I script? Hang on, Kim, 1 second.
Oh.
Did I mess up, Dean H?
No, just my hand up, and then I deferred to Steve, and
okay.
So
would you like to go next, Dean H?
If you don't mind.
Go right ahead. I didn't see your hand up there, so I apologize.
Right. I put it down. I'm hoping that, Sean, that you could share a written roadmap out with the phases between where we are now and the work finishing. And I know that's a long ways off, but even just understanding just the basic blocks, I think, would be helpful, even with approximate timelines that I know are not commitments. For example, in your report, you wrote that bids are expected in June, July. I'm asking for this, roadmap just because of how long this problem has gone on. I think it would be helpful to have something written down that we can show the community, and then over the next few months of meetings, we don't have to revisit everything. We can say, last time we said this, and here's how we're advancing or not advancing ahead or on schedule. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think so. So again, we're having to make some assumptions in this, right? So assume that all parties are agreeable and that this gets through with little delay in that sense. Post-survey, you're probably talking 6 weeks or so to develop exhibits. Again, if you expedite the agreement process of that pretty quickly, the design can continue on a track. So it's not stopping and waiting for that to be done, as long as we have some reasonable expectation that it's going to finish. So so you're talking 6 weeks to 8 weeks maybe to secure some rights, some permanent rights. while that's happening, you're getting a design effort that's underway.
Yep.
Probably somewhere like 2 months or so. And again, some of that's concurrent, some of these overlap. So 2 months, maybe a little bit more than that. And then, so that puts us into June, July. And then if we're lucky, you could get to bid within, a month of that design being complete. So you're talking maybe August. And again, this is pretty best case scenario, right? And
Absolutely.
so then
But
you're
just
pushing.
literally just having those phases written out so the community can know what's happening and not have to go back and watch a video of this to figure out what we thought was going to happen.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Sorry, now Kim.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that council and citizens understand that I think we were under a little bit of a misconception earlier that we had this thing totally budgeted, but what we budgeted was the engineering study. So there will still be funding that the council will have to vote on to go forward with the project once we understand the scope of the work, right? So, I mean, it's not like we don't have the money to go and commit and then to fix this issue. But just understand from an assistance perspective, we'll need to have another council vote as part of the process to make sure that we can allocate the right funds. Again, personally, I can't see that's an issue, but it's not like we have completely funded this thing from start to finish. So.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Scott.
Oh, sorry, lost the thread. Go on, and next person come back to it, please.
All right. Want to walk outside the door and come in? See if you can go find it. All right. What other comments? Bruce, how are you?
I think the committee's done a great job working with Sean, and this seems like a good plan moving forward. No questions.
All right. Thank you. Come back around here. I'll do Dean H and then see if Scott has remembered.
Sean, how should the council think about other stormwater work in the city's future? It seems like this is part of one set of one-off works, but then there's a lot of ecology compliance, and then there's a master plan or a comprehensive plan, to recycle that word. And I think that this is one of some other work. This might be like, how should we think about this going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, this is 17th and just specifically an aging infrastructure in general, right, is something that we should be concerning ourselves with as far as trying to get ahead of it as much as possible. So one way you do that is doing those comprehensive system plans. And like you said, recycling the term. But that's sort of my basis of relating that kind of thing to. But you're looking at it from the bottom up, and the city did a good job of that in 2015. There was a previous plan from 1992. But again, I think we're at that point where it's time to look at the system holistically and then redevelop that capital improvement program list and look at what our needs are now, because we're in a very different space in 2022 and going into the future than we were even in 2015, where some of these ecology guidelines and the NPDES requirements were not there. And those are only growing over time. So again, just looking at how we're accommodating that and how we're forecasting the growth in regulation, and then also the change in our infrastructure just through age. I think that undertaking a planning document and a planning effort like that is going to be very important to the city, just to make sure that we attempt to stay ahead of things and that we can forecast out in the future, so we're not always stumbling over our feet.
Okay. Around what time frame do you want to see that happen in?
It would be fantastic to start on within the next year or something, within end of 2022, start into 2023. It's a pretty heavy undertaking. There's a lot to it, but again, it's pretty vital for proper planning.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Scott?
Thank you. So I think I'll echo some of the comments that I'm pleased to see this. I think it's long overdue, but I'm glad to see it. The question I have is, obviously, we're not going to be going out and acquiring a permanent easement on these properties unless we're going to go ahead and do the repairs, which is something that the council approved last July. But this memo doesn't say anything about that. It just says we're gonna spend $45K to get the easement. the implication is that we're going to go ahead and fix it. Is it fair to draw that inference? And if so, then does this set a precedent for future action by the city to rectify these kinds of stormwater problems?
So what was approved prior was the $45,000. That was the specific authorization provided by council and direction to staff. There wasn't a further approval of construction funding or any other additional funds to construct any improvement. What was approved?
Excuse me. There was actually an approval of about $250,000 for stormwater improvements back in July.
For 17th?
No, not specifically for 17th, but as you know, a whole set of projects that I believe would have included this. But I believe that predated your time here, so you may not be aware of it. But we certainly did authorize that level of spending. So I'm just trying to get a sense of where are we going here. You know, I don't want to spend $45,000 to get a permanent easement if we're not going to actually use the easement to fix the problem, which I think is what the council is wanting the city to do. So I'm just trying to understand, is that the direction that we're going at 17th and 17th? And if so, great. And does that then mean that to the extent these things crop up in other parts of the city, we're going to take a similar approach and get an easement to the extent that we need one, and then fix them to the extent that they need to be fixed?
Gotcha. I understand what you're saying. So the budget authority was for stormwater program, so it includes all sorts of projects. I understand where you're going there. And yes, for this 17th specifically. So right now we're advancing other small drainage program projects. So there's other projects that have other impacts, other complaints, other known problem areas beyond 17th. And we started moving forward on the design track for the 2022 allocated budget. 17th is also a project that, again, is obviously important. It's been important to the council. It's important to the community. So absolutely, that is something that we intend to move forward. Again, assuming we secure those rights. I think what we've delivered and what we've talked about in the past is that if the city goes so far to say, yes, this is our problem to solve, then there is no going back from this. There is no getting a temporary right and giving it back, or fixing it and giving it back. So if it is our problem, it is our issue to fix, it's our issue to own in perpetuity. That's sort of what we talked about at the subcommittee level. So a long way of answering your question, I hope, which is yes, we intend to move it forward if we get this design bit, if we get the right easement pieces in place. We do not intend to sit on it.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
All right, Dean,
There's a lot there. So to the most immediate questions, any amount that was budgeted in last year, the budget authority would have expired. What we had was a task order for this, the design work for the 17th project that then we had put on hold. So the money that was budgeted that's currently budgeted for stormwater work would be for the 2022 projects. This wasn't foreseen at the time. So we would be bringing back a whole plan at such time as we have an idea of what the budget would be for this to ask for a budget amendment to spend money to do this project.
which is what Kim had said. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So additionally, I think that to previous points, I think that it's fair to that we would put together an outline of the tasks and steps necessary to make this happen. I really want to make it important to point out that what Sean was giving you was a lot of best case scenarios on timelines, and we need there to be a strong understanding that this is when we would hope it would be, and we'll give you a range of times for it. But I don't want to be held to something that, just because somebody holds out and doesn't want to give us an easement or something that delays the process. That's not something staff should be accountable for. I'm also have a couple of concerns about, making sure all this is in the CF capital facilities plans and capital improvement plans, and getting all that in there. That we'll certainly have opportunities to work on that through the year and through the budget process. Sean, again, changing subject slightly, still stormwater, made reference to a stormwater master plan that is, I believe, last updated in about 2015, 14 or 15. And so, again, it's something to probably be looking to budget for 2023's budget would be perhaps bringing that up to date to get us more in tune with what our current projects are. So that's like a handful of different items I kind of written down as from the various questions that we've been going along.
That jives with what I was jotting down. I think you captured the comments and feedback well. Anything else on this topic? Everyone's up to date. We know what we're doing and we have some requests. Okay. I'm sure we will continue to have that on our agenda for follow-up. So very good. All right. As we had amended the agenda, we are moving from 5.2, which we just completed, over to motions for consideration items number 10. The first one there is, let me get my other side caught up here. 1 second. The first one here is on 10.1. This is the consideration of a motion to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract with the Lighthouse Law Group, PLLC, for the city attorney services. You have the memo that is in there, and I know that we had some discussion last week, and then the attorney contract draft. Dean R., what else would you like me to queue up here?
Just super quick, we late this afternoon, we received the last changes on that draft contract that was in the agenda packet, and we updated the version that's in the packet. So when John shares that with you, you'll see the changes. The primary, I believe the only change in there from what you had seen previously had to do with public records turning over at the termination in section 7 related to the term. There's a section added. It's highlighted in, John, are you sharing this by chance?
Would you like me to share it, Dean? I can do that.
Doing it right now.
Okay, thank you. There you go. Maybe you can zoom on it a little. There you go. So this was the only change made since the version that probably people reviewed prior to today.
Can I just ask a point of order? So is the request here to approve this draft as it's presented now? Because it says draft, so is it, are you telling us now this is your proposed final contract?
That is correct.
Okay.
Basically what you had before, plus this one addition between negotiations between us and the Lighthouse.
Okay, well, I would just like to make a point here that as a member of the legal committee, you know, I didn't have any opportunity to give input to this draft, and I do have some comments to it. So I can make the comments after there's a motion, if you prefer to do that, Mayor, or I'll make the comments now and we can decide whether we want to have a motion or table it to consider the comments I'm going to offer.
I think it's perfectly fine if we ask for the motion and then we can see what the discussion, and if there has to be amendments, we can go with that.
Was Bruce, did you have a chance to look at this and provide input?
I looked it over. I had a chance to provide input, probably just like you of the first draft. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, the entire council was given the information together. So we were obviously working on a tight time frame, wanted to make sure everybody had it at once and was able to address if we needed to. So I will wait to see if I have a motion. If not, we'll move on to dealing with the hands. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second it.
Now we're open for discussion. I'll go with the raised hands here and see if others have other things. Dean H.
First, I think it's an absolute no-brainer that we're going to move forward with Mr. Brubaker. I'm really looking forward to this. I have a couple of questions that really have to do with the mechanics of the contract and how we as a city operate with the contract. In section 2, services, the agreement names Tom Brubaker, quote, or an attorney the firm approved by the mayor. I suggest we consider approved by the mayor and majority of the council. I also have 2 questions. Regarding the automatic renewal, does the annual renewal require city council approval every year or not?
Steve Stilio, I think it.
Yeah, I'm happy
maybe
to
we'll give
jump
an
in at
answer.
any.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, I'm happy
Go
to
ahead.
jump in at any time.
Go ahead.
I know there were a series of questions that were asked about the contract, and let me begin with a initial question by Councilmember Hakamovich. The expectation is that Tom Brubaker will be the lead. And if there is an amendment to the contract to provide for a different lead, then that would require coming back to the council for approval. This provision really is not to necessarily address that, but when Tom is unavailable and somebody else from the firm is going to cover a meeting or an issue, that's what this provision is for. But in terms of designating somebody other than Tom as the lead city attorney would require a contract amendment. And again, council would have to be involved. Second question is automatic renewal. Yes, it's automatic renewal. As currently drafted, it would continue from time to time under the current term. The term issue is somewhat unusual. This is kind of a standard form that for service contracts that the city of Clyde Hill and other cities use. But under the rules of professional conduct that govern the relationship between attorneys and clients in the state of Washington, the city attorney can quit at any time. The lawyer for a client can quit at any time, subject to whatever court dates there might be out there, and the ability to withdraw. And the client can terminate the relationship at any time. It's part of that relationship of trust and confidence between a client and a lawyer that if no longer you want them to be a lawyer, they're no longer there. The follow-up question that I saw in some communication was the question of who controls the decision to terminate the city attorney's contract. And I will say that that has been an issue that has caused great turmoil in a number of communities throughout the state, primarily the city of Benton City, where there was ongoing issues between the mayor and council over the control of the city attorney's city attorney contract. And that resulted in all sorts of procedural wrangles, including a failed recall effort against the then mayor of Benton City, and also the issuance of an attorney general's opinion, which I may have cited to the council on previous occasions, and you've seen my presentations on that issue, I believe, is time to time. And so the easy answer to this question is that the mayor and the council would hopefully work together to resolve the issue, because as the attorney general in the state statute governing the city of Clyde Hill references, it is the mayor and the council together that act on behalf of the city. And so if the mayor wanted to terminate the contract, then it would be up to the council to confirm it. If the council wanted to terminate the contract, then it would be up to the mayor to concur. I guess in the worst possible scenario, you could get into a situation where you get into adoption of ordinances and vetoes and passage over vetoes. But I would truly hope that that does not become a case, because if there is not trust for the city attorney among a majority of the council, then I would suspect the mayor is not going to be sticking with that city attorney. So long
Thank you,
answer, but the easy answer is it is the mayor and council together.
That answer your question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure. First, thank you. And the annual renewal, it will go through the city council every year.
Not with an automatic renewal.
Not with automatic.
Yeah,
That's
not
just
with an
what I meant.
automatic renewal. Yeah.
Great.
And if
Great.
there's
Making sure.
if
Thank
you want that subject,
Nope.
it's got to be modified.
All good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Scott?
Thank you.
There you are.
That's exactly where I was going. Didn't realize my camera was off. Sorry. Yeah, so a couple of points. First of all, I'm delighted that with the decision to hire Tom, and Tom, welcome. Really look forward to working with you, and I do think we had a good process in going through the RFQ, so I'm pleased with that. In terms of the draft contract, I don't have any big issues with it. I think in general it's good. I was pleased to see. I was call attention to a few things here from my colleagues on the council, but to see in the description of and delivery of services in section 4, 4.1.3, consult with and advise the mayor, city council members, city staff members, etc. So that's great. I don't think that was in the previous letter agreement. I would say that we definitely need should not have automatic renewals, notwithstanding what Attorney DiGiulio just said about the fact that state law allows either side basically to bail out at any time. That's fine, but we know from our experience here that we had a city attorney in place for 33 years with zero opportunity for the city council to weigh in on whether that individual and that firm were doing a good job or not. And that is something that I think we absolutely need to fix in this contract. And so a very simple way to do that would be, I would propose instead of 1-year term, we do a 2-year term and eliminate the automatic renewals, so that any renewal would be subject to the approval of the council. So if the mayor wants to do the renewal, great. The council gets to vote on it, and it's a 2-year term instead of a 1-year term. So that would be my proposed amendment on section 7. And then the other one was 4.3, the city may request the city attorney to be available by phone at times and in a manner agreed upon by the mayor and the city attorney. I would just insert the words the mayor, city council, and city attorney. Again, this should be a team effort, and the city attorney will be advising as per the previous, the 4.1 section, will be available to advise city council members. So I want to make sure that that Tom's availability will be that the council will agree with how that works. Those are my 2 amendments that I would offer to this. And with those 2 amendments, I would vote to approve this contract.
All right, I think I've captured, and I also have an amendment that Dean H had put out there, so I'll come back on it and get a second and move on it. Let me first go to Bruce Jones, and then I'll go to Steve to maybe respond.
I just wanted to say, it was obvious about the automatic renewal. I wasn't uncomfortable with it, given the ability to terminate the agreement with notice. And now Attorney DiGiulio says actually it's really no days, not 60 days. So I still am not uncomfortable with that. And Scott, your proposal of doing 2 years instead of 1 year, that may be a nice compromise. But let's hear what others have to say.
All right, Steve DiGiulio.
Very briefly, I don't suspect there'll be an issue with the suggested amendment with respect to the term. The sensitivity with respect to who sets up the schedule for the city attorney, particularly on emergent issues, is such that the mayor, who is the administrator of the contracts as a matter of law for the city, would generally be doing that. For the city council to be able to do that, they would have to do it while in an open session. And so typically we would provide in these contracts for the executive to manage that going forward. So, you know, if the council wants to insert itself in that, it certainly can, but recognize that in order to do that, it would have to be doing it in an open meeting. And frankly, that's always subject to the council's prerogative during the course of an open meeting. So I just wanted to remind you of that procedural.
Let me ask a question to clarify the point that you just made then. Let's say that two of us want to get together and propose legislation to council members, okay? We don't have to do that in open session. We can do that, you know, privately and then bring it to open session for discussion. But if we're going to draft an ordinance or even a resolution, we're probably going to need to get legal advice to do that properly. None of us, I don't believe, are lawyers on the council currently. So how would we handle that situation? If you're telling us we can only talk to the city attorney in open session, that's the part that I don't want to have.
Yeah. This is a much longer discussion that you will likely have with Lighthouse Law. The difficulty that Councilmember Moore identifies is the potential management of expenses associated with legal services and who is going to authorize the provision of those services. And, you know, if the council determines that two council members may request such services, then you could provide for that. The difficulty is then that the city attorney may be in a situation where the city attorney is running around drafting provisions for all sorts of different interests, and that can become expensive for a community. And as a result, many communities put tight controls on who can request legal services. Obviously, if the city of Clyde Hill wants to authorize less than a majority of the council to request legal services, it could provide for it, but just be mindful of the expense, because then you get, again, potential for many requests that may not be supported by a majority or the budget.
Well, what's Mr. Brubaker's opinion on this question?
Well, are you comfortable addressing this, Tom, or?
No, I don't mind at all. I mean, I basically concur with Steve. It's really up to the council to decide whether an individual council member can request, you know, work or an opinion or draft resolution on his or her own, or whether you all decide it'd be better to have concurrence of 2 or 3 other council members before the request goes in. It's essentially a money management issue more than a consultant issue.
I would suspect that would go into the council guidelines, would be a very appropriate location for clarity of how that would go through.
I think that's a good idea. Then you're all agreed on how the process works, and so the pathway is clear on when you will and will not, need my services to help you get some work done.
All right, let me see here. Dinar. I got you there. Sorry.
So I guess I would like to repeat something for the sake of everyone. In the effort to try and efficiently run a city and to collaborate between the different departments of the government, I guess I repeat my request that if council members have an item that they want to try and advance to the administration and through the council to make some sort of changes, that the people who are going to be staffed and have the most knowledge and the resources to make things happen is going to be your staff. And I repeat again, if there's something that you want, come to me, come to us, come to the mayor, and let's try and work together to try and figure out what exactly it is that we're trying to get to and what the resources are that we need to pull into place, and assume that we have at least two to potentially, at least two council members that are on board to trying to make something happen. Otherwise, we're just potentially wasting our attorney's time. And so this way, actually, staff can try and find some way to prioritize these needs of the council. I don't know how better to put it than that. Please use us.
All right, thank you. Steve DiGilio, did you have an added comment? And then I think we're ready. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. Certainly the addition of the city council in that section 4.3 is not a problem in light of the discussion of addressing this in the protocols or some other means so that the council can set the guidelines as to how it may use Tom in the future. So from a drafting standpoint, I don't see that as a problem. We can add city council into 4.3, make the suggested amendment. I'm not sure it has been seconded yet, but I think with those two changes, as I understand it, it sounds like the council is ready to move on this.
Yeah, what I understand under number 2 was adding in approved by the mayor and the majority of city council was for number 2.
I just say the city council because the city council has to act by a majority. So there's no reason to add the superfluous words.
So add that in. We got 4.3, which is what we are adding in again by the mayor and the city council and city attorney. We have that. And then I believe we were going to make a change to number 7.
Section 7.2, that would be, instead of a 1-year term, it would be a 2-year term subject to renewal by mutual agreement of the parties.
Thank you. You captured it. That is what I heard was the amendment to the contract. Can
I just clarify what he just said? A mutual agreement of the parties, meaning the city council and the attorney?
Meaning the city, which includes the mayor and council acting together.
Right. So it would still have to, a renewal would be subject to the approval of the majority of the council, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Hang on here. Tom, do you need to make a comment here?
Yeah, I just want to clarify with Councilmember Hakemovich that in regard to section 2, if you're, again, and I agree with Steve, you're going to replace the city attorney with another member from Lighthouse, that should require council approval. But I want to make sure you understand that if there's an emergency, if I get sick, hit by a car or something, you don't have to go to the full council to decide who's going to stand in from the firm in my place that night. I just want to be clear. There's substitution as opposed to, intermediate substitution as opposed to permanent substitution.
You're right. That's the intent.
My suggestion was based on not really understanding how it worked. I think the clarification makes sense, and I'm actually fine either way on this. And thank you.
All right. So do I have a motion to approve the amendments as Steve DiGilio had outlined?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Now with those amendments, I'm going to do one more time because technically we're supposed to. I'm asking for a motion then to pass the now new contract with Lighthouse Law Group. Is there a motion? I'm seeing your lips move, Bruce.
Yeah, well, there was stuff coming out. Okay, anyway, I moved to accept the contract with amendments.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Scott. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? That passes unanimously. Welcome, welcome, Tom Brubaker on behalf of Lighthouse Law. Very happy. Thank you.
Thank you. And I look forward to working with the city. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful.
I want to thank Steve DiGiulio for amazing work to date. Thank you for keeping us on track.
You
Thanks,
did
sir.
well.
Yes.
Very, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you to both, and to Tom, be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. All right, that was nice work, everybody, the whole process. And again, behind the scenes, Lisa, thank you very, very much for all your logistics on that. All right, that was 10.1. 10.2 is some changes, even as recent, very soon as happened, related to ARPA. And you have the memo there outlining some of the expenditures. Dean R., what would you like to queue up here?
There's a lot here, and there are two asks that are coming out of this. So there hopefully will be two motions.
Yep.
The American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, the city has been funded with almost $950,000, and that funding is good through 2024. There's a lot here in this memo. We tried to bring you up to date on what we've used it for so far and what we are proposing and or have talked about in the past as far as funding with it moving forward, and also merging some programs. So I guess first and foremost, we have $40,000 budgeted in the special projects currently for a website redesign. And we feel that this falls under the needs of the and then the ability to spend requirements of the ARPA program. And so we'd like to move the website redesign into the ARPA funding, which could free up some spending ability for things such as legal or planning services that are going to need some attention before the year's over, likely. Any budget amendments or anything like that would still be forthcoming later this year. So we
So let's
have.
deal with that first one there, and then we can come back to the second one. Would that make sense,
Okay.
Dean?
Yeah, that
All
works.
right. So thank you, Scott. Comments on this, Scott?
This is not really a comment, it's more a question.
Sure.
So when were these ARPA funds available to be used for the hazard pay? Wasn't that available for many months before we actually took advantage of it?
No, it became effective back. We got that happened, I want to say, like March of last year. And we implemented the resolution in October of last year. So the spending authority happened. We started using it in November.
So we've only done November, December, January, February, and March.
Yep.
Okay, but it was available from March of last year. So.
Right, but you couldn't retroactively pay.
Right.
Yeah.
But the emergency orders are still in place and everything. And I mean, I would assume that hazard pay is popular among city employees, right?
Right. So I haven't gotten to addressing that part. I can skip to there if you like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm just curious as to what the rationale is here. I mean, this is federal money, and it was earmarked specifically for that. We approved it. I don't understand why we would now reverse that decision and say, oh, we're going to spend that money on a website instead.
Great question, Councilmember Moore. The federal government did to us something similar to what they did to us in the CARES Act, where they gave you the money, they set you some preliminary rules and guidelines, and then every so often they decided to tighten them as they saw fit. They did that to us again here, and when the final rules came out in January, they had previously said that there was a limit of like $25,000 per person that was a cap on the amount for this premium pay. They have subsequently, and we found this out today, they've subsequently actually really ratcheted it down to a number much, well, the $25,000 cap is still there, but they've limited the who qualifies to a number that is low enough that many to most of our folks before long, if not already, will have already passed that figure, because it's based on an annual salary and things, rather than just how much you've made in or are given in the premium pay. So we're at a point where we need to repeal this resolution, and we are actually asking that we revise the repealing resolution as it is currently on there, from ending it at the end of on April 30th to changing that date to April 1st. And I mean, this is breaking news, whatever, this afternoon, and I hate to do it that way, but we don't want to get into I guess the potential other situation would be that if council chose to want to supplement with city funds, if we started to exceed these caps that are provided through ARPA, we could continue it. Obviously, it's popular, but the idea wasn't that these funds would go on forever and ever. It was through the pandemic. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, but I mean, what if the pandemic comes roaring back again? I mean, we've got a new variant that's ratcheting back up. I just don't understand the rationale. I mean, look, from my perspective, this is one of these things where we approve the expenditure. It's federal money that was earmarked for this. I think we should use it all. I mean, use as much of it as we can. Now, if they've changed the rules, I hear you, but then max it out, right? I mean, unless you're, I don't.
What I'm trying to tell you is we have maxed it out in cases.
Lisa, do you wish to clarify? Looks like your hand's going up.
Yeah, I can add a little bit of context. So basically, there is an eligibility requirement for folks that are eligible to receive the premium pay, that they have to be at or below 150% of their residing state or county's average annual wages for all occupations that's defined by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, whichever is higher on an annual basis. And so for us, I believe that limit is $114,255. That is based on the King County metro area's annual overall average annual wage for all occupations number that I looked up today. That means that at present, 6 of the city staff are not eligible to receive this premium pay because they exceed that threshold. There is some additional concern that potentially some other employees that are eligible for overtime may also potentially reach that cap with overtime. There is a number of folks that are within a few $1,000s, assuming no overtime, based on how much we receive for our cafeteria plan plus our salary benefits. And then any premium pays that folks might be eligible for, such as longevity or education based on their labor contracts. So that being said, we are now in an environment where we're all back in the office. Most folks are able to work safely in the spacing that we have with limited uses of masks and social distancing. At the time that this was implemented, that was not the case. It was very much an active work from home preferred environment for a lot of folks. And now that the state has reopened considerably based on the governor's, reopening work, we would still like to continue having our emergency proclamation in place so that we can go back to that environment. Shall there be a reemergence that is significant enough that we need to start sending people home again, or potentially sending people home again? But as of right now, and with the rescindance of the governor's proclamation, reopening, not rescindance, but reopening, we don't think that it's as necessary to have hazard pay for employees in the office today as it was back in October when we passed the resolution.
Right.
But it was my understanding we weren't 100% certain on which this came out today as to which category you were using for the labor statistics. So that was
That
the
is
high
correct.
end statistics. So we're looking at, we don't want to exceed these caps.
The lower number that Dean's referring to is the all occupations for Washington State annual mean wage as of today, when I looked it up, is 150% of $68,740, which is lower than the $76,170 that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has as the average for King County metro area. So we are waiting for verification from Clark Newber that says that we can use that higher rate, which I believe that we can. I believe that's King County's number that we should be eligible to use. However, we want to verify that. So there is a possibility that that eligibility number is less than $114,255. And if that's the case, then even a greater number of our employees will not be eligible to receive any premium pay.
Okay, well, the governor just, why are we getting
Lisa,
out?
you may need to mute because I think we're hearing the echo off of you. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody that, you know, the governor rescinded the ban on masks indoors 1 month ago today. So it's not like it's a long time. And I'm looking at coronavirus statistics right now in King County, and I bet you Mary Ann knows this better than any of the rest of us, but
Up
it's
35%.
back up. The 7-day average is 848. The 7-day average on March 9th, or let's go, March 12th, when he did that, was 245. So we're just about to be quadruple what that was. So I wouldn't be too confident that it's not going back that way. And I just also just feel like, look, I mean, we essentially, as a council and as a government, made a promise to our employees, and I don't feel good at all about backing off of that until we use up the funds. And I hear you, you know, if there are limits on it, then fine. But I'm completely comfortable with the money going to the lower paid employees. I mean, those are the people, if they're working from home, that, you know, probably had extra expenses and hardship. And, you know, I just don't know why we would not go ahead and follow through on that commitment. I don't want to dip into other funds, but I'm personally don't like the idea of repurposing money that was earmarked for this, that we voted to spend it on, to do something else with it, just to, you know, fill up a different budget. But anyway, I've said enough. So
Yeah. Okay, Dean R.
So my recollection of the resolution did allow for some discretion on the city administrator's part. I believe we could try and leave it in place for the people who we don't believe are going to exceed the threshold, and stop it for the rest. I'm not sure that it fully fulfills the intents of what we originally sold it as, but it would be an option that we could do.
Well, I think the bottom line too, if I may, is that this is going to be heavily audited. And to all of our credit, when this money came out, money is there, and they were all saying, okay, this is great. How can we spend it? And they're like, well, hang on a second. And I don't know how many countless meetings I was in, and breakout sessions galore, and everyone's being creative with how they're going to spend the money. And yet we all had to go back to auditing people to say, if we spent it on this, is that okay? Or are you going to come back saying, no, you shouldn't have done that, and now you got to take it out of your own general fund? So this information has just been really horrible. I think every week there's something coming through my email system saying, here's yet another learning opportunity on how you can spend ARPA and get reimbursed. And I know Lisa has probably sat through so many of those. So I think what I'm hearing is a little bit of what both Scott and Dean is saying here is, let's make sure that our staff is able to take full advantage of this at the max limit that we're able to do it based on the numbers and the charts and graphs that Lisa is able to confirm. And those that are already maxed out or will be, or whatever point they're maxed out, then we need to stop. And then if monies get reallocated or things open back up, because you're right, Scott, we might be in another surge and they may say, yeah, okay, here we are again. Then we come back together and say, okay, now what do you want to do? Does that sound like what I'm hearing on this particular issue? Okay, Steve Friedman's nodding.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that answers that portion. Now the question will be then, how do we then make sure we allocate? We may need to save some, right? Allocate for those other items that are in the memo that we were hoping to earmark for ARPA spending.
So if I may, can we go back to the original? The first topic was actually the 40,000 that we talked about moving from our special projects budget into ARPA for website redesign. That was the first topic that we were discussing.
Yeah. So we're able to use ARPA funds, main communication during obviously pandemic. I think we've all had our issues with the website, and trying to make it work, be better, do whatever is just not expertise and time and resources we have. And so the proposal is, let's take advantage of the ARPA and get somebody in here and do a major overhaul of website. So I guess we need to know if that's a thumbs up from council.
Can I ask one question about that?
Please do.
Basically, Yarrow Point, Hunts Point, and Medina all seem to have very similar providers. Are we talking about just going to the systems that they have, or something different?
We would go out for some form of you're talking about for the website, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, we would go out for a request for quotes, similar to what we've done. There are some models that we like that seem to be pretty popular around, including at least one of the ones you named. So, but we would go through an RFQ process to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but just to clarify, it says here in this memo that the 2022 budget includes $40,000 in the special projects department for a new city website. It did not contain anything with respect to acquiring gig services. I don't even know what it means, but we already have 40,000 in the budget, right? So why would we need to tap ARPA for this? That's the part I'm not clear on.
So the idea would be that we would use the most restricted funds eligible for a project, and the ARPA funds qualify. So we're basically looking to shift something we were looking to do to the ARPA funding to help us communicate better with our residents.
Yep.
So I'm getting a lot of head nods. So that works for me towards where we go towards motions in a bit. Now we have talked about going to gig services, internet, gig fiber to help work with working remotely and for streaming our meetings moving forward. Especially when people are working remotely, the upload speeds from this end are extremely slow, and it creates a lot of lag. And if we have to go back, and actually I say when we have to go back to some degree of a remote situation, and I say when, because we will have to make some changes when we renovate City Hall, right? There's going to just be disruption to services here. We need to be able to have reliable. It's very frustrating to be working from home and have the things freeze up just in trying to move screens around and things like that. So we're looking to move the gig part of the proposal in and combine it with the City Hall renovations. And it helps us. It's still moving it from something we were going to fund out of ARPA, but put it into the City Hall renovations and technology projects or upgrades, just to better fit in the how we will report this to the feds through their uniform guidance. So again, we're going to be looking for a motion for you to approve both of those sort of things. Just kind of while we're on the topic, I also was hoping to, I just want to throw out there some other ideas that we were still under consideration to bring to you at a later date for potential qualifying ARPA usage. Certainly not limited to these things, but potentially some City Hall HVAC upgrades. Our system is one that filters only when it's on. It doesn't filter constantly. That's a best practices item. To date, we've been really lucky and very fortunate that certain revenue items have picked up the slack for things like development revenue. So we haven't had overall lost revenue fund-wise. So that's still a qualifying item for the next couple of years. A great suggestion that I heard real recently was to, and it is on our to-do list in some shape or form down the road here, but rewrite our emergency management plan. It is old and out of date, and stormwater issues still qualify on here. And we're certainly welcome any thoughts and ideas that any of you have towards, we have said that we, right now, actually, if let's see what's on the screen, we're not sharing anything at the moment, so give me a half a second here. Right now, we're saying that this is what we've actually spent to date. Granted, the premium pay number is going to change kind of based on the things we've learned today. But basically, we've spent 470. We're anticipating, including the let me see. We have either spent and or encumbered / earmarked towards our 900 and what's my note? 943,000-ish that we had, and of that, we've kind of obligated 400 and about 80,000 of it. I lost my other note, and I'm not quite sure where it went. Well, so basically, the gist was to this. We still have another 300-odd thousand, close to $400,000 to spend of that money over the next 2.5 years, and so certainly open to, again, that idea of if you have things you want us to be looking to spend it on now or later are good times to please bring them to us.
Well, and this is how even the premium pay came about, is I think it was one of your city administrator meetings, Dean, and you were in a breakout session and it's like, hey, we're doing this. I'm like, we didn't know we can do that. So I think as people are finding appropriate avenues, we take it back and decide, wager it. Is that something applicable and appropriate for us here? Okay, so what we're needing from the group here is, based on this discussion, is this allocation as we have defined it here agreeable to the council? And do we have to make a special motion for this? I don't think so. It's just making sure we're giving you the thumbs up in the allocations, right?
Well,
directing the staff, number one.
Yeah, we can do that however you want to do that. I don't know that there needs to be a motion. If we're all thumbs up, I can be good with that. And it sounds like we're not doing number 2, so I guess we're not actually looking for a motion here.
Right. Number 2, I think we all agreed, max them out as best as we can to the guidelines, and those that are maxed out are done, and those that still have room, continue to offer them the option. Steve DiGiulio.
I have, while we've been talking, drafting revisions to the resolution that might address these issues, and I'm allowed to share screen. I don't know who's going to allow me to do that.
Oh, yeah, the little share button up there. Don't hit leave.
No.
Hit share. There you go. Okay. Do you see it? There's a little box with an arrow up. There you go. Good job.
Okay, so have you got that screen, the resolution draft up in front of you?
Yep, it's in your packet, guys.
All right, so what I've done is highlighted revised language in the draft resolution that is in your packet and highlighted. So section 1.3 of the recitals adds the phrase, or otherwise appears to be subject to new limitations under ARPA regulations. Section 2 is rewritten to say sections 2 of resolution 665 is hereby repealed. That's the one that says premium pay goes away if the emergency ends. Since we don't know when that's going to happen, it's superfluous. In any event, section 1 of resolution 665 is amended to limit application of premium pay from ARPA funds to those limits set under ARPA regulations. Section 4, as revised, would say ratification and confirmations. Any act prior to and consistent with this resolution is ratified and confirmed, and changing it from April 30th to April 1st. So that is my takeaway from this discussion.
Nicely done.
Dinar,
do you have a comment?
Do you still have the, once the emergency proclamation is rescinded, that it will go away?
Yes, that's still there.
Okay.
All right. So council, I'm hoping then with these fast on the feet changes that Steve DeGiulio is able to offer, that I can have a motion for this.
So moved, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you. This passes unanimously. Thank you, Steve, for pulling that together. And I think then, Dean R., we have the answers. And as always, we will keep, and Lisa will keep us honest with where we are with expenditures and how they are being allocated. So everybody knows what we have for ARPA and where it's going to. Okay. All right. That's 10.2. Good work, everybody. 10.3, we're going to go back to the otherwise lineup. And we're back to consent agenda, everything under 6.1 and 6.3. May I have a motion to approve?
Sorry, I think I asked to pull out.
I did, yeah. I said 6.1 and 6.3.
Sorry, I misread that.
Do I have a motion for that?
So moved, Steve.
Is there a second?
Yeah,
Yep,
second,
so-
Bruce. Yep.
Okay, any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, consent agenda approved for 6.1, 6.3. Now we're looking for a motion to approve 6.2. I guess I'll ask for a motion and then we can see where the discussion goes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Now discussion.
Couple of questions. I see
Sure.
$15,000 to the Blue Line Group 1 month in. Is that expected typical monthly or exceptional at the start?
Who's going to
Mr.
answer?
Greenwood, do you want to address this? I believe that's a really high number for them ramping up, but
Yes. I can say that we have spent many hours doing the scoping of this project, and that some of that is front loaded for some of that work. But there are 3 primary streams that we are talking about here. One is the comp plan, one is the land use code, and one is anything else that they need to assist us with, like something like a critical areas ordinance. So it is front loaded a bit. So what we're expecting again is to sit underneath the 100,000 mark for the entirety of the year. I would have to wait to see what's coming up with the public participation plan to see what we are looking for the April bills.
Okay. When we approved this last month, I think, there's an item about perhaps needing a budget amendment in order to be able to cover the full cost. Is that still part of the plan, or is that a wait and see?
Dean, do you mind if I take this question?
yeah, go ahead.
Excellent. So
Or Lisa.
that is most likely going to be a a reality, both for the good and the bad, because we are expecting to spend more than 20,000 this year. But we're also, there appears to be a very solid chance that we will be getting in excess of $80,000 from the Department of Commerce grant that might take place over the course of 2 years to help pay for half that cost.
Lisa, do you want to add anything?
No, I agree that we are potentially receiving additional grant funding. We also have, we are only in the first quarter, and so my finance report will reflect that as well. We are not in a bad position right now. We are doing about exactly as we would expect to be doing. However, there are certain line items that significant line items that are coming up that weren't part of the budget. Legal fees, for example, is one of them. Obviously, the longer we go with not having a permanent city attorney, the more money we're spending, and will likely exceed that line item. However, that does not mean that we're going to exceed our overall budget for the year yet. It's too early to say if we're going to need a budget amendment, given, like John was saying, some of these potential grant funds and other reduced spending in other categories. So I will keep you informed as the need for a budget amendment may arise. If it looks like we're moving in that direction, we will certainly bring that forward to the council as soon as we know more.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I heard about Steve, I'm guessing you're going to ask about updates on that or something else?
Well, with respect to Blue Line, I was going to ask I assume it's in the general fund. It's recorded in the general fund. Where in the financials do we see that? Because I can't tell. Is it in the other expense category or what?
That should be special projects.
I feel like that was special projects. Yeah.
Are those project funds that come out of a different fund, not the general fund?
That's
correct.
The way it's budgeted, yes.
That's my lack of knowledge on your chart of accounts there. Okay.
It's the 100 fund is for planning and consulting. So if you do have your budget document open, it is going to be down in the projects section, not in the general fund section.
I'll take that time.
If you would
later.
like, I can open it on the budget document if that would be helpful for people.
Or when you get to your section, Lisa, you can highlight it.
Yeah.
All right.
The only thing I wanted to bring up here, Councilmember Friedman and I talked about when we're getting an update about comprehensive plan and Blue Line and everything. I think we're asking if it could be at the study sessions at the end of April, especially if we've started to spend this much and we have scoping in place.
I honestly don't know the answer to that question yet. That might need to be the first one in May.
Yeah, because the Planning Commission is taking the big piece of it on April 28th. That'll be after the next study session, Dean. So we'll look at the timing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure if anyone else has. Steve, your hand's back up.
No, I meant to put it down.
Oh, all right.
The urban forestry services, what's driving the city arborist service spend?
What we're talking specifically in the line item in the budget. Is that what you're after?
No, in the spend that we're approving this month.
Oh. Lisa, you have that?
I don't know what the arborist, I can't say what the arborist was doing. I don't work in public works, so I would not have been the one that approved hiring an arborist. So I can't speak to the specific project that was related to.
Okay.
I'm here.
Oddly,
You're still there, Sean?
Courtney's out tonight, unfortunately, unforeseen, and she would be the best person to probably answer that. But if you got something, Sean, go for it.
Yeah, the bill I see that came through on me was for Bartlett for 74856, and it was a consultation for view conflict with neighboring trees. So some of them are landscape consultations or in a tree assessment that's provided for in code.
Okay, last question. The plantscapes item, what was that about?
That was the hedge removal on 92nd.
Okay. Last question there. Is there anything that required this expenditure in Q1 of this year versus Q4 of last year, Q2 or Q3 of this year?
I think it typically has to do with when the vendor invoices us.
I actually meant like the work being done, not the invoice landing.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Are we talking about the hedge removal still?
Yeah.
Which work item?
Which item, Dean?
It was the plantscapes item. Like, what drove the work happening in Q1 of this year as compared to Q2 or Q3 or even Q4 of last year?
Got it. So it was bid out in, I think, November or so, or maybe early December of 2021. And initially the hope was to get it done right before the end of 21. And then the contractor couldn't. They actually had a whole crew get COVID. So then they were on a scheduling funk for a little bit. So it didn't end up happening until February, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good questions. Scott.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, what is and Pacific topsoils? What is that? Is that related to the plantscapes project?
I think the one on this one was that there was a different one for some bark before on the 92nd, but on this recent one, it was mostly for plant bedding around City Hall and just in other general places. So just addition of bark around town.
Okay. So with regard to the plantscapes one, as everybody knows, that removal was adjacent to my property. And I just want to make the point that the choice to take the hedge down was a discretionary choice made by the mayor and the city administrator. There was absolutely no obligation to take it down 7 years ago when we entered that permit with the city. The hedge had been in place for 35 years at that point. It was, at the time it was cut down, it was 42 years old and had served as a landmark at the entrance to the Mercia neighborhood. The neighborhood had sent letters asking that it be left alone. It was in the right of way. It wasn't on my property, but in the right of way. I think all of us received numerous emails from citizens asking to leave it alone. And the city has never articulated a rationale at all for its destruction, aside from asserting that, quote, it's a contractual matter, not an enforcement issue. I think that's what the mayor has said repeatedly. So I'd like to examine the contract, otherwise known as the public place permit. And I asked the city to send that around to you all yesterday, so I assume whether you've looked at it or not, it's in your inboxes. So if you wouldn't mind to bring that up and take a look at section 2, which says that the permissions granted by the city to users herein are revocable at any time by the city upon the giving of not less than 30 days advance notice to users, unless the reason for revocation involves safety of the public or the protection of property, in which case they may summarily removed by the city. So this is, even though this permit had a 7-year term on it, the reality is it's essentially a 30-day term, okay? And it was for 7 years. And the reason that this permit even happened was because the city screwed up on our building permit and our major remodel and didn't notify us until we were way down the path that they wanted us to cut the hedge down. And then the mayor at the time and the city administrator at the time were kind enough to give us time to plant a replacement hedge behind it, which was in no way, shape, or form a reasonable replacement, but it was the only way we could actually protect our privacy. So just for a fact, this was not a 7-year permit, it was a 30-day permit. And likewise, you know, it not only was it revocable at any time, likewise, the permit could have been extended by the city at any time, and there's no contractual reason that it could not have been. That was at the mayor and the city administrator's discretion. And on December 2nd of last year, At the mayor's invitation, my wife met with and told the mayor that she was dying of cancer. My wife stated that the hedge provided her with privacy and sound dampening from cars on 92nd Avenue Northeast, and she asked the mayor to delay cutting it down. The mayor never responded. And I'd just like to give the mayor the opportunity to explain to the council why you and the city administrator never even responded to my wife. And if you'd like to elaborate on your reasoning for actually cutting it down in the context of us approving this bill.
The decision around your hedge, as you identified, Scott, was identified and decided upon 7 years ago by the then administration and the mayor. And you can certainly communicate your understanding of how you came to know that and feeling some level of requirement to sign it in order to get into your home. That is your perception. I appreciate that. Then you and your wife had signed and notarized that agreement with the city. And they graciously, unprecedentedly, had given you 7 years to grow a replacement hedge. You and your family had 7 years in the meantime to bring this up as well. It was unbeknownst to me. And then, of course, as I'm taking in office and it was brought forth and addressed and identified, it's like, okay, here we are. And I'm very clear when we have code, when we have contracts, when we have decisions as such, it is, in my perception, the best approach is to be consistent. And if things were to be removed and taken out, that is the path, of course, that I was going to take. I will also say that to the degree that, yes, people emailed me and otherwise, we had good public comment even at our council meetings. I listened. I truly did. It's not an easy decision. My background's nursing. It was a struggle, but in my mind, my whole career has been spent on regulatory compliance. And if the regulations say this, if a contract says this, if a signed notarized agreement says this, then I am going to follow through. Because how else do I decide? You get to do it, you don't get to do it. It's called inequity. And I just felt like I needed to follow through. And I did actually receive commentary from our residents on the other side of it saying, you need to follow through with the signed contract. So not everybody was on the side saying, let it alone, leave it alone. There were others that said, that contract is there. I expect that you would follow through. So that is the decision that I had and I made. And that's what had happened. Mm-hmm. And I am sorry that you are the personal nature of this, Scott. I am sorry for this, but I am trying very hard to just keep my business as mayor as being as factual and approachable in that way, according to the code. That's the only way I feel is equitable for everybody on board.
Right. And so to just use another example, somebody driving down the hill on 92nd, northbound, down the steep hill, towards a police cruiser that's at the bottom of the hill, and they happen to be going 28 miles an hour. By your logic, it would imply that in every case, those people would get a ticket. Is that how you look at your job to enforce the laws? You said letter of the law, letter of the permit said 7 years. It also could have easily been extended. My wife specifically asked you to extend it by a year or two, and you never responded to her.
In that meeting that we had, it was a listening process, and I didn't have a decision made at that point, Scott. I really did not. And then we were being clear with you that as we're moving forward, we gave you the option to go with your own landscaping people to remove it. Would have been a lot cheaper, would have been to what you would have desired to have done. But you said over your dead body, you were not going to do that. And so we gave you the deadline, we told you the date, and we proceeded according to the contract.
It's not a contract, it's a permit. It could have
been
an
agreement.
Could have been extended if you showed some human compassion, Mayor. And I'd just like to point out that you live on Northeast 30th Place, and there are two homes on your own street with living fences that are much higher than the 8-foot limit. Is the city looking at taking any enforcement action against the residents of those homes? It'd be 3630 or 9636 Northeast 30th Place and 2970 96th Avenue Northeast.
I think I've been really consistent, Scott, in answering the questions to you and a lot of the people that are listening in here. When, according to our code, certain situations arise that require us to look at it, then we will follow what the code has said. So
it sounds like you'll pick and choose when you decide you want to.
I'm not picking and choosing.
Well,
If there is a legitimate complaint.
You've got 2 homes on your own block that are completely out of compliance with the law. The same
As
exact.
are there hundreds of other homes in the city, Scott. I said we will take care of them when we have significant remodels, we have demolitions, we have a legitimate complaint, and when a non-compliance is made worse. I think I got them all in there. There might be another one I'm missing, right? And so we take the opportunity when the situation arises to look at the case and say, okay, now what do we do? So when we've had this discussion, as in your case, Scott, maybe I'm hoping that in the comprehensive plan discussions and our residents give us input, when we have a significant remodel, what do we want to, that is one of the times that we bring things up to code. Do we want to continue with that? Or yes, in this case, but no, in that case. What do you do with the right-of-ways? What do we do with this situation like yours with the hedge? We need those particular codes. Those are the ones that we need to change and update that will reflect what our landscaping and our community will look like going forward. Because right now they are what they are and the consequences therein, you identified as one that got caught with that. Yes. But moving forward, we have to change those codes. Those are what the comprehensive plan needs to go towards. And I don't believe that's in 17. I think that's in 12.
The section that you enforce is 17.37. But in any event,
non-conformance in 12.
I agree with the fact that that needs to be changed. And we specifically asked you to hold off on cutting the hedge down to allow that process to play through. Okay. And you refused to do it. And you didn't even give my wife the courtesy of a response. That's a fact.
I followed through with the plan as when I made the decision and we processed and communicated accordingly, Scott.
Got it.
So at this point, I'm uncomfortable with the fact that you're taking a personal issue and now, you know, with in the context of everybody here.
Relevant and
what is the outcome you're looking for here, Scott?
Just as the cutting down of the hedge was a discretionary decision, you charging us for that discretionary decision is also another discretionary decision. So I think the council should decide whether they think it is the right thing to do for the city of Clyde Hill to add injury to insult or insult to injury, I'm not sure which it is, and send us the bill for that decision that you made that you didn't have to make. But before we go there, I'll leave that to my fellow council members to see if anybody wants to make a motion. But I want to read for the record the email that my wife sent to you on February 1st, after we were notified on 24 hours notice that the hedge was going to be cut down the next day. She wrote, "It is with great sadness that I write this note. Thanks to the city, now you can see directly into my bathroom window from 92nd Street, so I literally have no privacy. And now it's even louder from cars and people walking by. As someone terminally ill with cancer that expressed so in our in-person meeting, I am shocked at the behavior of this city and the unnecessary and vindictive decision made to destroy not only a 40-year-old beautiful living specimen, but also to destroy any sense of peace, calm, and quiet I might find when trying to rest and heal from treatment. This wasn't an urgent matter. You could have waited, and you know it. What this was is a heartless and cruel act, Mayor Class, and behavior not congruent with what being a public servant is all about. Goodbye." That was sent on February 1st of this year. My wife passed away on February 20th. I just want to get that into the record. I'm done. Thank you.
DNR.
There's a lot here. The contract, the public place use permit is a contract and between the parties. It explicitly states who will pay for the removal if the property owner does not remove it as requested. I have it, I believe, shared up on the screen and highlighted. That's all I have to say.
Right, but the point is that is reading from that. It says the city shall be entitled to recover its costs, disbursements, and expenses. It does not say the city shall be required to recover its costs and expenses. No more than it says that the city shall be required not to extend the permit in an extraordinary situation where cutting down the hedge would have a negative effect on a terminally ill citizen of this and taxpayer of this city.
Councilmember Moore, are you asking the city to gift funds to a council member?
Of course not. It's ridiculous.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, please, if you have comments on the community, this is not the place for you to announce that, but I just wanted to reinforce. We are at this section of the of our agenda. It's been approved and seconded. We're in the open discussion section. We are asking for the ability to pay our bills out of our city funds as it's presently paid. And then I believe then between the city and Scott, we'll take the action of what is in the agreement. If I have that right, Steve DiGiulio, I think that's where we're going here with the understanding and interpretation. So this is payment of the bills, inclusive of that price that is for Scott's hedge removal. Any further discussion? All in favor of paying the bills, please say aye. I'm seeing Bruce's mouth, but not.
Well,
yeah, aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. I only heard 3 ayes, so are the rest of you abstaining?
Are we voting on all the bills or just this particular?
Yeah, paying the bills, inclusive of all that we talked about.
I didn't realize I was muted. I said aye.
Oh, okay, thank you. And Scott, your vote, please.
I abstain.
Okay, thank you. So it passes 4-2 with 1 abstain to pay the bills. All right, thank you. Now we go on to section 7, and again, just to put closure on that, there will be follow-up individually and privately between the city and Scott. Section 7 is administrative report. Dean. And you're on mute, just so you know.
Actually didn't start talking yet, but thank you.
Anticipating. All right, everybody queue up and we can push through on this.
Was expecting to have the screen shared and it's not coming up quickly.
You need John to help?
No,
here we go.
All right, I wanted to take this opportunity to just remind everybody that the deadline's approaching very quickly for the F1 filings. That is later this week, April 15th.
And for Dean H, you're aware of this, right? Because you're new to this lovely, I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
All right, just wanted to also remind everybody about the Arbor Day celebration or event that we do with the 5th graders from Clyde Hill Elementary School. council is invited. So if you would like to attend, just let myself or Courtney or John know so that we can take care of any potential OPMA requirements. And just one quick reminder that Thursday, April 28th is the next Planning Commission meeting. That is what I had for that part of it. I wanted to take.
Steve Friedman has a hand up.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I don't.
The Planning Commission meeting, to me, I wanted to understand what was going to be accomplished, because you mentioned in here that you've got 5 priority items to review. We have no idea really what the advice has been to the Planning Commission with respect to each of these items, and I'm concerned about that, and I'm concerned because I want to make sure that the advice reflects a direction from the council. I realize we're not here to go tell them what to do. They go back to the public and come back to it, but I don't want them to come back to us with something that just doesn't fit to where we were. We've been through that before, and that just becomes everybody's waste of time. So I'm worried about that.
Great question. I get it, Steve. That is the 5 items that we worked on in 2021 related to the fencing around pools, had some parking issues in government and in different areas. And we reviewed those, I want to say at the November meeting.
Yeah.
John has his hand up. I think if there was something you wanted to say that, but these are the ones that we've already
You've
brought
seen
to
them and
you.
giving input. Yeah.
And also to that you guys have already referred to the Planning Commission.
Well, I understand that. I know we picked the priority items and at a high level. I know that we got a list that said needs review, and with certain aspects of the codes that we picked. But that's all. I don't know anymore. I don't think.
Okay.
Council can correct me. I don't think we've seen anything that says this is the areas that we would like you to be looking at from this standpoint. Am I accurate? And the rest of the council can agree or disagree.
I actually want to violently agree with you, Steve.
I was worried.
My understanding of the process as it was outlined by John Greenwood is that for all of these chapters, the city is going to take a bunch of feedback from its accumulated experience around enforcement and updates based on state law and case law, and roll up a bunch of guidance and hand that guidance to the Planning Commission along with chapters. I think we haven't seen any of that guidance. All we've seen is here's the identifiers, the chapters will go to the Planning Commission, period. There's no additional guidance or structure.
John Greenwood, would you like to clarify?
You guys are confusing the ones that came in the November meeting versus the December meeting.
Yeah.
The December meeting had the 7 areas we identified that include private lanes, fences, and the variety. Those ones we're just beginning to try to work on. These are the 5 from the items that were worked on
the rich list.
2021 that we did actually bring draft code to you guys to refer to the commission. So go ahead, John.
I agree that there was draft code. I agree that there were modifications to that code as it was presented to the council. Was there any other guidance, or was it just the revisions in the documents?
Go ahead, John.
First I'll start off by saying that when we're talking about the council sending this to the Planning Commission, just recognizing that Councilmember Hakamovich was not on council at that time. But what is going to be sent to the Planning Commission on the 28th are the 5 chapters with the revisions that were authorized by council in Q4 2021. There is one additional expectation that I have of our planning consultant. What that expectation is that they are going to put on a review of these 5 chapters to make sure that staff and the city attorney did not miss anything. Other than that, this will be given to the planning commission so that they can hold their public hearing, receive public input, provide their own input on any suggested changes or whatnot, and then actually kick it back to the city council. So it'll come back to the city council for their review. Then it'll go in front of Department of Commerce and SEPA determination before coming back to the council a third time. So there'll be 3 touches on this for city council. There's no changes that staff are recommending after it left in Q4 of 2021. The only thing that's going to be in addition is a memo from the planning consultant making sure nothing was missed, because land use laws and case law has changed. Well, apparently changes quite frequently. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't missing anything. I hope that answers your question, Councilmember Akamovich and Councilmember Friedman.
I'm trying to look at the agenda from December, and I guess what I would ask is that I'm not.
So what I'm hearing is that you're wanting to know what were some of the more specifics that were going to be involved with the changes that we did go over at the meeting. They were really pretty benign, as I recall, and you were all fine with that as being suggested. We finally referred to this as the Rich list. I think Rich is online because I think these have been ones that have been, really bothering him for a short period of time, low-hanging fruit, and really need to be addressed. So we were able to quickly get them pulled together and vetted within the city. I don't know if that helps jar the memory.
Well, I'm trying to find, go ahead.
For more clarity, again, it is, I believe, heights and safety requirements regarding swimming pool fences, and identification and clarification of, I believe it was compact parking and where that's allowed in school zoned districts and government zoned districts. And I believe we cleaned up a little bit of language in one section that referenced industrial zones and waterfront of Clyde Hill, of which we have none. It was the low-hanging fruit.
So if I think I have the section, the page on December agenda, 233, is it the email from Dean on land use code update title 17? It lists the 5 establishments of districts, government, schools, swimming pools, parking area regulations, correct?
I believe that's correct, sir.
Okay, so with recollection, I think you're suggesting to me that these are relatively benign codes that are easy to update and get them done, and I think that was the goal. Isn't that correct? Right. But
we hope so, yes.
As I go through in 1712, I'm trying to see if the specifics with respect to those 5 you're doing, I still don't see very much here, but I think our approval reflected back then, like, okay, good. These are easy ones. You get them done. You can chop something off the list. Then we get to the more meaty stuff after this. Isn't that correct?
These had to be done anyways, and we'd be able to get our planning commission at work, getting something happening. So then they're queued up and ready to go for the other stuff coming. Are you able to see the screen, Steve? Because Dean's showing you what those changes are. They're in red, so you can see those.
Boy, I know I'm old. I don't remember seeing anything like this.
Okay.
So,
So just really quickly, at the November meeting, we brought the work that we had performed. We can go back even further if it helps to jog, but earlier on in the year, we had promised that we would come forth with like 3 to 5.
Yes.
We had no success with the flag code. Then we had a little cooling off period, and then around August or September, we said, well, we can make sure and staff will come up with 3 to 5 areas of the code that we do know need some adjustments and some work. And so all the kudos went to Rich Solosky because most of this work was his and with our previous city attorney. And they came up with these 5 sections of the code. Some of that was driven to help allow compact parking for the development related to both either a city hall or the fire station. It changed some sizes of some compact spaces. And at the November meeting, we brought those to you. And my recollection, without having the minutes right up here, but was that council approved directing this to go to the Planning Commission in 2022. At the December meeting then was the one where we went through and we prioritized what we originally had as 6. You guys added the 7th one of private lanes and easements, areas that we were saying had some deficiencies and needed for what we were going to work on in 2022 as part of our plan that would then be part of what gets turned over to the Planning Commission at some point as we get done with it.
So Steve, what do we need to do now going forward? What can we help you with?
Well, given what I'm seeing here, I don't want to take up anyone else's time regarding this. Let me get my head around it. If I'm not recalling it appropriately, pardon me?
Well, what I'm thinking is we are going to give updates as to the outputs of the Planning Commission, whether it's through the administrative report or otherwise. So it might be helpful if we were maybe just having a little more detail to kind of help put context on it. Is that what I'm hearing? I
want to understand. I want to understand the more specificity in the work they are doing and what the Planning Commission is being directed to do based upon staff's understanding of what council believes is important within these areas.
Okay.
That's pretty high level, but if we don't do that, then the Planning Commission just doesn't have then they go off in their own direction, come back with something, and then we end up with the possibility of us saying, well, that's not what we wanted.
Yeah.
And there's some key areas coming up, and I'm concerned about that. And
yeah, we're going to get our feet wet, make sure we get the process right to where it goes.
And that's what I'm interested in. With respect to all that we've discussed, some of the which is there, I want to go back and be corrected if my memory is
okay.
Inaccurate, and I'm okay. I don't
John,
mind.
We're going to be reliant on you for a lot of this. Comments on that?
Yes, just a process check for council members. How this is going to work is, or rather what we previously got the thumbs up from, and obviously you are entitled to change that process, is before any suggested changes are sent to the Planning Commission for their own review, independent of the city council, as well as holding a public hearing, the city council is going to see that draft and they're going to be able to make changes to that to your own desires.
But John, you're giving me timing almost after a lot of their work's been done.
Okay.
I want them to do the work that we're asking, that we expect to see from them, so that we can have a more collaborative process with them once they do their work. I realize we get to see it and we can say yes or no, yay or nay, and I don't want to put the Planning Commission in the position of being worried. Oh my God, they're going to do this to us again. So that's, we don't know if that's what they want. I hope they approve.
Well, again, and I'll allow, if I may, I don't want to overstep my boundaries, but if I can just confirm, the Planning Commission acts as the advisory body to the city council, but staff and the city attorney and the Planning Commission will be reviewing these chapters and giving the council our suggested amendments for the council to then make their own and then send off to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will not be reviewing any waivs of code before the city council reviews it.
So in this particular situation, it'll be important then to refresh your memory on that process that happened, which was, here's the items, the staff went through it, and they said, council, this is what we are recommending. You guys looked at it, felt okay with it, passed it, and said, let's send it on to the next step. So you're absolutely right, Steve. What we learned our lessons in the past is at the point where the recommendations are being brought forth to council, we've heard it loud and clear. You want clarity, you want specificity so that you can help the planning commission go down right or left based on what you're envisioning is going to be the right path for the city. And you want to make sure that you have enough clarity at that stage instead of hoping that there's enough there. But then when it comes back to you, then you're going to have to ask them to go all back and start over. You want to try to avoid that. And I get that.
That's my goal.
Yeah. Okay. So it might be, let's make sure that you, I guess you can probably on behalf of the council, let's make sure we retrace those steps and go through that so that you can see if that played well for this particular case. Okay. All right. It's all right. All right, Dean R, we got the targets. So this is our master list of constantly changing. We have reds because things couldn't get going, started or continued or all that stuff. What do you want to say?
Sorry, is that supposed to be on the screen now?
Oh, I'm looking at my second screen. Dean, you have
I'm
your.
working towards getting back there. Sorry.
All right. Sorry.
I
Thank you.
shared a bunch of other things in the meantime, so sorry.
Stay with us. Stay focused.
So the priorities and target issue. Oh, I didn't. Everything but share it. Sorry.
Yeah.
So the priorities and targets that we have here have. This is a dynamic document, and it obviously changes monthly. And the juggling act that we perform as we keep adding balls to the juggling act, occasionally some are going to either require just us juggling faster, or some of them are going to eventually hit the floor. So just some of the changes that have happened on here. Just for April, the police vehicle has been ordered. That is up here, but that is like a 6 to 8 month process between when we get it and when it actually gets here and gets outfitted and gets into service. So that's something that it's marked kind of in green and is done because the actual ordering is done, but not the actual receipt. The employee handbook, just due to bandwidth and things, it is really close to being done, but we don't have it right now. So it's currently falling onto the floor as far as getting pushed back in time. We asked for an extension on the GFOA budget award. That has a due date here in the next couple of weeks. So that will hopefully get out the door here pretty quick. The sweeping contract, we decided we had sufficient and didn't need one. We have pushed back on the IT services contract, RFQ, et cetera. That is getting pushed back for the time being. We've also, one that we've decided is going to hit the floor entirely is the biennial budget. We don't have the time to make that happen right now. And so that's a every 2-year opportunity, and it's going to add more work for now, but would give us more time probably a year from now. The Title 17 work is progressing. It's just slower than we had hoped, again, due to shifting priorities. Hopefully now that we have both the planning consultant and Lighthouse on board for attorneys, that can hopefully speed some of the things up that we've kind of had to tread water on to some degree. But that is most of what has changed here from March to April in the priorities.
Okay. Yep, we can't get it all done, so we have to make amends. All right, anything, question or comments for Dean?
Question. The budget book that's out on the website is still the 2021 budget book. When's the updated one happening?
That's the thing that has the due date here in the next couple of weeks. So we hope to have that out there here in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
Coming. Yep. Were you going to comment, Lisa? I saw you pop on.
Yeah, I was just going to tell you that the GFOA budget book deadline for submission is the 29th of this month. So we're really excited. We're going to be linking you up to a ClearGov, which is a new software that we acquired that will have a better electronic, highly accessible and visible budget book that's more interactive and will be linked on our website that folks can get and can play with the data and look at it in all sorts of different ways. And it's largely done. We are basically just putting the final dots on the I's and crosses on the T's, basically making sure everybody gets a chance to look at that before it's submitted. But yeah, we're very excited to roll that out, and you should be seeing that in the next couple of weeks, by the end of the month for sure.
All right. Okay, moving on. Rich, how are you?
I'm doing good. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. We still keep just moving along the building permits. We issued a new house permit at the end of last week. We have another new house permit ready to go that should hopefully be picked up in another day or two, or another week or two. And we got a pre-app meeting for another new house on Thursday. So.
Is it getting easier with this COVID, building companies getting their supplies?
Yeah, they're having supply issues. You know, a lot of times they have to buy their material. You know, like I know they'll order their appliances just as they start the house. Hopefully they'll get them when they get done.
Wow.
Anytime they didn't order enough material, it's hard to get the stuff coming in. That concrete strike didn't help. That's over with now, so hopefully they'll be caught up. You know, the price of materials skyrocketed again, so they're dealing with that. So
yeah. All right, we'll hang in there. Appreciate keeping an eye on it. Any comments from anyone?
Oh, if you don't mind, 2 residents reached out to me and asked me about names appearing in this report. Medina's report does not list owner-resident names here, much as the chief's police report doesn't list names. Is it possible to list the contractor name or contractor license ID instead?
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, it's all public information, so.
Agree. It's just about the level of gift wrapping.
Okay. Yeah, we can add another category in there.
I think that folks are just trying to make it, you know, it's great to suggest, but if we could drop the owner name, I think some folks would be a little bit happier.
Okay.
I'm not religious about it. I'm bringing it up as a suggestion. The other question was Medina's monthly report out includes permits applied for. Is that possible as well?
Yeah, well, it should be on that form, maybe the next one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It's on the form someplace. I'm sorry.
All right, so the request is to remove the names. So we have a level of privacy and to add permits applied for so we can see where we are with the balance.
Right, and the actual suggestion for what it's worth was removing names and adding the contractor name, because at least then there's someone to contact.
Yeah, no, we can do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other comments? Those are great. All right, Sean, your turn again. Public Works.
Share your own screen, Sean. I can put it on screen. What's that? I can put it on screen. There you go. All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. It's Sean, Public Works Director. Just quick update, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. I know that there's a lot of topics going on. So the first item is just a bullet list of what we've been up to. The big thing was the annual report. So submission of our DOE annual report, which was submitted on time. We expect that will trigger, it always triggers a review with Department of Ecology. So we'll review it with the ecology staff and look for places for improvement. So general activities, the crew did do a lot of sign cleaning and adjustments. So they went around town,
Each guy had a section that they went and did and just kind of scrubbed signs, made sure they looked good. And then while they're at it, just looked for any signs that needed replacement, repair, otherwise. Stormwater, Tyler's been busy on our annual inspections, and something we added to Mobile 311 was the field screening. So that was something that is an important item for Department of Ecology that we have to make sure that we're just demonstrating how we're achieving that on an annual basis. So adding it to our what we already had going on with an annual catch basin inspection was an easy fit. Crew has started mowing and trimming, so spring growth is here. There's been fertilizing. We mentioned earlier in the invoice section, bark has been purchased and flung around town all over the place. So things are looking pretty sharp for the most part. And then hopefully in the next month or so, we'll begin our pavement assessments, which will inform the development of the tip. So have a slightly different idea of how we want to kind of go about them and weight the roads a little bit differently. So hopefully, if we have enough time, we'll implement that this year. As far as the overlays, the big project going on right now, the Lakeside Circus is here, and so there's just trucks all over the place. They've been all over town. Maybe you've seen them, maybe you haven't, but grinding and then overlaying. So they're making pretty good progress. Tomorrow should be a big overlay day for us, so lots of asphalt on the ground. I won't read all these slides, but we did a pretty good outreach to the local residents, and there were some that needed some additional trimming just to give room for the equipment to move in and out without breaking a bunch of branches and limbs. So that is probably going to generally wrap up by the end of the week. So again, this is a pretty fast hitting project, and then we'll do final payment in a month or so and wrap up small items. City Hall remodel, I just added this in from our consultant. So they're moving along. It's kind of sitting with them right now and their sub-consultants. So we're not super involved at the moment while they're getting everything together and designing the project. But again, she's looking at the June, being ready for bids in June, hopefully.
Can I ask one quick question on that?
Go ahead.
This came up earlier that gig services are going to be included as part of this project. And that's gig upload as well as download. My question, is that going to be unique to City Hall, or is gig upload going to be available to residents as well?
I think Greenwood's been working on that one, but I think it was City Hall specific. I think it was an extension just to our facility. Greenwood, okay. Does that sound correct?
It's just for City Hall.
Just for City Hall.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep. So then the small drainage program, as that was mentioned earlier, so the design effort's underway. Survey is being collected right now. They were out earlier today, and they'll be out probably next week or two to collect surveys. So that's a pretty major undertaking, and it'll set the stage for everything else. So that is all I have in this director report.
Good job. Questions or comments? Thank you, Sean. Love the pictures as usual. Appreciate that. All right, we're moving on here to Lisa, finance report.
Hey, I'm sorry. Was the complaint report going to be in that section or somewhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where was the complaints? Oh,
yeah,
yes.
I wasn't sure if you wanted me to segue right into it or what. So.
Oh, I'm overlooked. I'm sorry, Sean. Go for it. Thank you. And yeah, I think Dean had a question.
Yes, and Sarah, if you're still on and available. So Sarah has been, I'm not sure who all has met Sarah, but she's been doing a lot of this work in the background, and she's been very busy. She's been working on these separate reports and making adjustments. So Sarah, if you don't mind, do you want to speak?
I'm here, don't worry.
Perfect. You want to speak to the report kind of development and how it's looking so far?
Sure. Let's see, I can share my screen, I think, as well. So here is the complaint report that I've put together with help of Sean, and we actually haven't presented a complaint report at a council meeting before. So at the request of council, here are complaints that are from the beginning of the year up until just the beginning of April. I have one complaint on the list, but I stopped the list count at April 7th. And so at the top here, you can see that there's a tally of how many complaints we've had in a month. We don't really have too many, just 4 for January, 4 for February, and there was 7 in March. Only difference that I've made to this complaint list since the study session last week was adding a resolution column. So if a complaint is closed out, I put the resolution as to why we felt it was okay to close the complaint. If you want to know what part of the code it was referencing, we put a section in there. And then I intend to continue to put complaints on the list based off of, as the months run. So it'll be a year-long list, not necessarily a monthly list. And there's also a section here where there's ongoing complaints. So these are prior to 2022. So, and those are the open ones there. But that's all I really have to say about this.
I think it's great.
Council, is this me? Yeah, good.
I wanted to ask a question. Sean, you sent out a spreadsheet. And so there's an item, I don't know if it made onto this report, but I was just trying to understand how things work. On the sheet that you sent out on row 37, there was an item about a hedge safety concern. And the comment said, Sean inspected the hedge on the property. It is planted in the ROW and it is very well maintained. Does that mean that it got removed because it's in the ROW, or it's okay in the ROW because it's well maintained? I'm just trying to understand the rules.
That particular hedge was only about like 2 feet tall, I believe. So I believe that's why we decided it wasn't a safety issue. But just for reference, I think that's the one we're talking about.
Okay, so
I don't know off the
stuff.
top of my head. I'm trying to look it up really fast, see if I can find it. Oh, yes, I know which one this was. Yes, so this was one that it's set back reasonably far. It's pretty short. It didn't seem like it met a lot of the standards. So it was back from the pavement a little bit. It was short, and it also had a clearance zone so a step down zone even at the intersection for sight lines. And so that was the particular discussion on that one.
All right, I don't want to rat hole in this. I'm just saying that I admit I'm a little confused because I thought that if it's in the ROW, it's gone.
Only if they do a substantial remodel. So that's when we do adjustments and removal of landscaping such as that. So if this property came in for a substantial remodel and under a permit, we would have them remove that hedge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Steve?
Was this the part we agreed to talk about the overall enforcement issues that Dean brought up on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, if you don't mind, I want to discuss some of that, especially in relation to Dean, the city administrator's request of the city council. And what I want to remind everybody is what he asked after last week's study session. He said, is there something about the way we are handling them, that being enforcements or complaints, now based on being materially impacted or being a direct neighbor or whatever that is bothering the council? I'll leave that question at that. So that was the city administrator's comment. As a result, Council Akamovich and I, we've been discussing this, and I want to present what we're thinking about and trying to provide you with an answer here. Our opinion is that staff, Gene Roll and his staff, they made the policy. We want you to tell us how you would want to adjust it, because we agree that there's a problem, and it's not necessarily the council's to solve. The community is really best served if we hear from you, especially based upon the feedback you've gotten to date. You know, how do you want to communicate and adjust the enforcement policy so that it's fair, consistent, and coherent, or whatever reasonable area you think that it should be. So to provide some context, here's a quick walkthrough of the discussions to date that we've had and why we're saying this. So first of all, in January, the administration presented its code enforcement policy. The gist of that was that in May of last year, the administration adjusted the complaint-based policy so that complaints must come from materially or significantly impacted residents. Then in February, council asked some questions about the policy, such as what determines material or significant, and when or how this was communicated with residents. The gist of their answer was that the administration is not necessarily under an obligation to write out its policy or to formally communicate the policy to residents, or really to explain the decisions it's making in pursuing that policy. Then in March, Council asked the administration to produce a complaints report, which we just reviewed, that was discussed at last week's study session. And that report, we think has been helpful in setting up the discussion about the community's confidence and trust in a fair, equitable, consistent, and coherent policy. So what we're coming to a conclusion here is that we think the community and the council have been clear in that there are some problems with code enforcement. We also think that stringently enforcing all the code while the code is changing is not in the interest of the community. So what we're doing is we really are concluding here that we're looking to the city administrator and his staff to tell us what adjustments to the code enforcement policy make sense in order to serve the community better, especially in light of what they've learned from us over the last few months. So that kind of sets out how we're viewing our response to what you've been asking for as city administrator. You've also received other comments that I've sent over, trying to set some general comments in some general direction. But at the end of the day, it's really the city. We think the city can review and update the policy and look for help from us to help you do that more effectively and more coherently to the extent that would be necessary.
Okay.
Appreciate that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. You were speaking on behalf of you and Dean H. I appreciate you guys putting your heads together. Anybody else here? Bruce or Kim? Scott? I think Scott's somewhere. I don't see him on screen. Anything else that you'd like to add?
I think the work that Dean H. and Steve did, from what we've just learned, seems to make sense and a good recommendation to staff.
All right. Kim, you okay?
Yes, I am. I think that I don't want to. I'll get off my soapbox in a second. I think that this wasn't the question you asked, but I think from a very high level, I think it's the council's direction to set some guiding principles and strategy, and to create the right policy decisions based on that, and ensure that our codes and ordinances reflect that, number one, and then secondly are enforced in a reasonable manner. I understand there's tons of exceptions to all of those, but again, I think we were talking earlier about somebody going down 92nd at 28 miles an hour, right? I mean, I think there is some leeway in terms of the enforcement. It doesn't have to be 25. At the same time, though, 45 miles an hour is over the top, right? So again, I think that as a council, hopefully our charter is to provide that strategic guidance and underlying principles of both code and also fairness. And if that's not right, then tell us now, because I think that's the way we're heading.
Okay. I think we'll probably, if I'm reading, okay, I'll go to you here in a second, Sean. This is getting ideas generating, and probably will mean maybe tapping on perhaps Steve and Dean H to maybe help to formulate some steps, and not taking the time here, but we can probably then take it to a study session in the next bit. Okay. Sean, then I'll move on to Lisa.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just really quickly, just because we have the magic of the internet here, I just wanted to kind of show you guys and just hopefully help illustrate something, because we talk about this a lot, and we talk about all of the places where there's hedges that are overgrown or fences in the wrong way, but there's so many places where it's also exactly per code and it have been done really well. And so I just want to illustrate that, because this particular intersection, that particular complaint you asked about, Councilmember Hakamovich, is a very good example. So this is one of the intersections, an older house, hasn't been remodeled lately. This pole is actually more of a sightline concern than anything else. You can see how this hedge is very low, step back out of the sight distance triangle, and then again low beyond that. But again, right up on the road, not something we exactly want. You pan over to this side of the intersection. This is a recently remodeled house. You can see very clearly the right-of-way is low growth ground cover or shrubs. The fence is set back, and then there's a aesthetic softening feature here with these, hedges that are set way back. And again, I just want to take that real quick opportunity just to show on this specific instance. I mean, you have opposite corners where you see what is, and that's okay, but what the city's been trying to achieve over years with these code requirements. I just think this is a good example of that. And again, I don't want to lose the fact that there's a lot of properties that have been subject to this requirement and have done it very well all over town. And again, hopefully we can continue that, but if the council desires to change it or the community desires to change it, that's fine as well. But again, just wanted to show that. So
thanks, Sean. That was very helpful. I appreciate that. Okay, guys, let's move on here. Stay with us. Stay focused. Woohoo! Lisa, finance.
Hello, all. Let's try this again. I was so close before. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So tonight's finance report includes a review of the first quarter of 2022. And so just as a reminder for those of us that are new or just listening in tonight, our council relies on a quarterly budget monitoring plan that utilizes what we refer to as a red flag system to identify revenue line items that are 15% below our budget targets or expenditure line items that are 15% above our budget targets. And we do this quarterly. So first, I'll touch on the highlights of our revenues through March of 22, which are total operating revenues are approximately on target for March. As I said earlier, they're coming in about 0.4% ahead of budget targets so far. Our investment revenues are finally starting to show some signs of rebounding as interest rates begin to rise. Our LGIP actually recorded $1,303 of income this month, which is a new all-time high in the time I've been at Clyde Hill, with a rate of 0.23%. So we almost made 0.25%. Utility taxes are coming in about 10% above budget expectations to date, and our overall sales tax revenues remaining really steady and ahead of projections. The first quarter does include holiday sales, which were very strong this year. Approximately 51.2% of our total sales tax comes directly from construction type activities, and about 35.5% was from retail and landscaping. So we definitely depend heavily on construction. Of the top 25 taxpayers to date, 17 were construction related, and the next 5 are all large retailers, so the Amazons and so forth. Development revenue is unfortunately still lagging behind budget. Our total revenue through March is $141,000, which means we need to average about $71,000 per month to get back on target. But as Rich was saying, he has a couple of good projects in the hopper, and that will probably show up here in this second quarter, and hopefully we'll get right back to where we'd like to be. As of now, we've actually, as of March 31st, we only issued 1 new single family residential permit this year, which is a slower start than we would have liked to. So let me show you this our little list here. So our red flag list, our policy requires that we add any items to what we call a watch list that are basically following in that 5% to 15% range, and no revenues qualify at that time for this particular category, and only 3 revenues are identified on the red flag list or have greater than 15% behind budget revenue targets. This is actually a marked improvement from the same time last year. Last year, we had 6 revenue streams that were pretty far behind our budget. Of the 3, the first one is the traffic fines and other penalties, which is about 26.8% behind budget. This particular revenue is actually quite variable, and the fines total less than 1% of our total budget, or in this case, they're behind by about $2,300, so not significant in the big picture. The second item is the development revenue, which we just talked about, which is basically 30.7% behind budget. So this is significantly more important as it makes up a total of 17.5% of our operating revenue. Again, largely due to the issuance of single-family residential permits being low, but it sounds like that's on the uptick. The last line is the category of other operating revenue or miscellaneous revenue. It makes up about 1.6% of our total operating budget, and it's things like the sale of surplus assets, the amount people pay for public records requests. And so we are currently 38% behind budget targets, but it's really difficult to estimate this because it encompasses so many small items that do come up, but they're not consistent year over year. I do expect that this number is going to increase in the next few months because tonight the council approved the surplus of the property resolution, and so there may be some additional revenue falling into that bucket. So although the red flag policy requires that we're supposed to present options to address these concerns, we are only in the first quarter this year and actually in a much better position than we were this time last year. Also, as a reminder, the city is expecting its second tranche of ARPA funding in the amount of $473,000 in the next few weeks. So that's should be deposited soon. I'm happy to take other suggestions if the council would like us to consider addressing other revenue shortfalls in any other way. Bear with me, I can't see y'all. So if anybody's raising their hand, please.
I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to expenditures, our citywide expenditures are on target for budget expectations, and they don't meet any of the criteria to be on a watch list or a red flag list. We're doing a very good job of managing our expenditures. So far, we've spent $73,000 less than we budgeted this year, but we do still have some big ticket items and some uncertainties to account for, some of which we've talked to you guys tonight about, like legal fees. We've already spent over 50% of our annual budget on legal fees, and that's only in the first 3 months of use. We also have $631,000 that we owe to Bellevue Fire for our fire service. And as those projects that Sean's working on right now, as the weather starts to improve, you're going to see some of those big line items coming through for those overlays and big public works projects that are a little more weather dependent. Let's see if I can. So on the next page, you see our utility taxes, which are about 18% of our overall operating revenue, and they're all doing very, very well. And this is not much change over last month's report because most of these are quarterly. On our monthly financial report, the city did run an operating deficit this month. Down here at the bottom, you can see that uses exceed sources by about $83,240. Our biannual property taxes are starting to arrive, though, right now. This is when the first payment is due in the year. So it seems that overall we're going to be on track as we move into our second quarter. Our total cash and investments are at $12,714,000 as of March 31st. And then I did want to just pop down here, and I know this is really hard to see because it's quite small in your packet, but you can kind of visually get a little bit of a sense of it. There were 6 home sales reported in March, so that's a pretty significant increase over January and February, where we only saw 1 home sale in each of those 2 months. So our April REIT deposits that just arrived today or yesterday were $147,900, so a much higher amount than we saw the last 2 months. I also, I'm supposed to be reporting that premium pay for our essential workers that was funded by the ARPA grant. I know we talked about that at length, but the month of March, we paid $8,869.76. So our total spend since November of 21 has been $43,380.68. Obviously, we already talked about that, so no follow up on that at this point. Is there anything else that anybody has questions about?
I'm not seeing any hands. It's making sense.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. All right, Chief, you still there? How are you doing?
I always get asked if I'm still here. One of these months I might get bumped to the front of the line. So
I know one day we will.
I'm here. Just a couple things or whatever, is you're all aware, or most of you should be aware, or whatever. There was 2 deaths of officers in the last month. Clyde Hill was honored to have been asked by the city of Everett to assist in the funeral procession, and 5 of us, to include Lieutenant Hanson and myself, did traffic control for that procession. I think last month I reported that we had gotten some DNA evidence back on a burglar suspect that did a couple of burglaries in our neighborhood, and Detective Beatus Sway, through his hound dogging, actually got the burglar suspect to turn himself in, and he's probably being booked into the King County Jail as we speak right now. So
that's awesome.
Finally tracked him down. So other than that, if anybody's got any questions.
Yeah, is your staff coping okay? Anything we can do? I know it's hard when your colleagues and peers are fallen and you're stepping up to give in-person and vehicle support and such. Anything we can do for them and for you?
One of these things I always brag about to my peers is that this city always shows great support or whatever. So it's just the kind words and the continued support works wonders. So thank you.
All right. Please keep us apprised. You guys are doing good work. It's hard out there.
Thank you.
All right. Anything further? Seeing no hands. Let us then go ahead. Nothing in the section 8 or 9. We already took care of 10. Mayor's meeting. Really, the whole meeting was spent with on the Point City's mayor. That was the presentation that Janine actually was at with the fire chief, and it took almost all the agenda. I had to leave to go to a meeting at the end of time, so I don't think that we covered anything more. So nothing further to share about the mayor's meetings. Let's see here. Kim, what about ETP?
Nothing really earth-shattering on ETP. I think you've seen all of the packet information and long-term plan and everything else. Probably the most notable thing that affects us is that there is plans to do a stride, which is also, if you think of it, the red bus that's going to go from Bothell to the Bellevue Transit Center with like 4 stops, and then from the Bellevue Transit Center down to essentially the Boeing Access Road. So hopefully we'll get some cars off of 405. Going north and south. It's still a ways out there, but that's probably the most interesting of the projects that are on the plan.
Well, I will add this is that the mayors met with Claudia Balducci. I had my bike and she wanted to see the trail and the intersection on Evergreen Point Road. But as we were there dealing with that and talking about that, she got a better appreciation for the changes in the bus and the directions and why it can't go this way or that way. So, she's a very strong position and power and authority within this whole transportation realm. So I think it was helpful for these people to physically come out on site and see kind of what we're all talking about. And I think she was going to go back and have some visuals in her mind as things are being brought up. So it's all starting to click. Appreciate that. All right. Anything else, Kim?
Nope, but let me fish or swimming on 11.5, so we're fine.
Okay. All right, sounds good. We had SCA had a networking first time back in person, and it was Dow Constantine kind of just giving a current state of affairs. It was just good to network and get reconnected with everybody. And thanks to Foster Garvey, because they were the sponsor, great partners, and Kennan was there doing the introductions and such. So support and thank Foster Garvey for what they've done. The pick is tomorrow night, and we'll just keep apprised of public issues committee and some bylaw changes and policy changes. Things are just munching on it, nothing as an outcome as of just yet. However, Steve, you may have some changes coming up in your solid waste area.
Yeah, there's a couple of issues to talk about. I actually, since our last council meeting, not kind of the study session, I went to we had 2 MISWAC meetings. Number one is solid waste has proposed their 2023-24 rates. So those relate to the per ton disposal rates, and what they're proposing is to continue to make sure that we have service at the transfer station 7 days a week. And then there's a focus to try to increase recycling. I think that leads to some additional costs. The rate that they're proposing, which would start next year, January, it's part of the pass-through we get on their bill. Yeah. It's about 75 cents per month per user. It's about what we were last year, give or take what their final numbers come to pass.
Yeah.
Second item, they're kind of revisiting the upgrade for the Houghton transfer station. They've now identified 4 sites. They've updated the sites that they're working on. This is becoming, in my mind, an everlasting gobstopper. It may never end. Anyway, there's 2 sites in Woodinville. They're actually kind of the southern part of the city, southern edge, next door to each other, and there's 2 sites there. And then they're talking about 2 sites actually in the Houghton area. One is the existing site to upgrade, and then or replacing the Houghton Park and Ride, which is an underutilized state property. It's only 1,000 yards from the current Houghton site. I bring it up because our residents would be using those.
Yeah,
my guess is, I think at the end of the day, they're probably just going to upgrade where they are. There's one last item that is, I'm still trying to investigate the impact it will have. Solid Waste is going to implement a policy in some transfer stations, and this includes Houghton, in which a vehicle or a vehicle with a trailer that is greater than 25 feet long will be directed to another transfer station that can handle them. It worries me because it might have some impact on, particularly on landscapers, which is so vital in our community.
Right.
Basically, they would send them off to Factoria or somewhere like that where they can be handled. The reason they did this is because they were having people fall into.
Oh my goodness! For safety.
Safety. And they were falling into the containers, and it's crazy. And so what they did was they said they put up a higher fence, and then they made all the vehicles move 5 feet away from this area so that when you stand on top of your trailer, you don't fall into the container. So their answer is, well, if your vehicle's too long and there's a problem of getting it in there and having other vehicles get around, you can't go there anymore. So it's 25 feet is the limit. I know a lot of the landscapers go to Cedar Grove, which is private, and that's okay. And there are some other benefits of going like to Factoria's cheaper dump rates for landscape material. I'll find out more on this thing. Seems like
you could engineer control this and put some sort of safety belt on, but okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Steve. And I think, again, we missed putting the Justice Committee on. Do you have anything from that?
No.
Okay.
Nothing to report.
All right. We know the fishies are okay. And Bruce and our chief, how about NORCOM? Look like you got some stuff going there.
Well, at least from my chair, the chief has not indicated that there is a reason to re-engage yet. So nothing that I've known about.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah, they haven't. I'm sure it's going to be up for discussion soon about going back to in person or whatever, and then reestablishing the stakeholders meeting. So
yeah.
That's where Bruce would get involved, and that's once a year.
Okay. Sounds good. Our Emergency Management Advisory Committee, we're updating bylaws tomorrow, and I guess there's some changeover to the Puget Sound Emergency Radio Network. Which will we have to make changes in our radios, Chief, with that PSCR changes coming up?
So yeah, was it Motorola or something? There's a huge bandwidth repositioning, and all of our radios are due to replace. They're just now coming out with a scheduling date for our patrol cars and all of our portables, but they're all being replaced at no cost to the city. They took what our inventory was before, and they'll replace radio for radio.
Yep. Okay, yeah, I saw that on the agenda tomorrow and I was obviously assuming it was all gonna take place.
Yeah.
All right, any questions or follow-up questions from anybody for our section 11? Lots going on. Thank you. Future agenda topics. So I think Dean H, I think you were wanting to signal something for budget. So I just want to make sure we're capturing your needs.
Thank you. There's a memo that's in the packet from Councilmember Jones and me, and I will ask Councilmember Jones for his opinions here. Basically, this is just, please read this at your leisure between now and the next meeting. We're trying to socialize the topic. We're not trying to have the discussion right now. One of the comments that led me and Bruce to producing this, I think, was thinking about the budget process as a partnership and thinking about proving out the assumptions at the start of the process. Bruce, go ahead.
You've nailed it. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Nothing to be really discussed now. We hope you'll give it some attention and we'll get it on a future council meeting.
Okay.
Good,
So we're
three
placeholding.
good things to think about. Placeholder, exactly.
Okay, good. It's important as things pop up that we capture them so that we have them at our fingertips when we need that. So we have an April 26th City Council study session, assuming 7 o'clock. And then we have the May 10th on the horizon for the regular City Council meeting. So you see the standing templates there. And as always, reach out to myself or to Dean if you have a particular agenda item you like to get on it, especially if it needs any vetting. It gives us time to be able to get it as prepared as possible.
Could we
Dean, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dean H.
Sorry, could we consider starting the study session at 6?
We can put an inquiry out and see how that will land. How about that?
I'll ask. Thank you.
Okay, that sounds fair. Dean R.
So just a couple things. I don't believe we ever actually officially said that, yes, we wanted to have this on the 26th. So I just wanted to make sure we were all in agreement that that is a good date, and then subsequently the time. Staff is real open to the idea of changing starting times, earlier the better. Whatever works for you guys, you roll that one. So,
should we put a doodle out and throw a couple of options and see where it might land?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bruce, do you want to say anything about May and June and rules and guidelines?
Well, we're looking at study sessions on the 4th Tuesday in May and June as well to hopefully continue to move our process along. Is that in the plans?
I think we're hearing that. I think as
But we're talking about the rules and guidelines, not the document that we provided for socializing with the council today, not that document.
Right, the other one.
Right. So we're going to, we're going to continue the process with you at the study session on the 26th, and then we'd like to do the same thing 2 weeks after the May meeting and then 2 weeks after the June meeting.
So I think that's important, especially the other comment about start times. I know that our current city staff, the routine has been, for the most part, one a month, and then occasionally we pop in an extra one. And we know that with budget advisory, that kind of tags on a few extras in there. So this is now routinely. So Dean will need to have some discussions administratively how we work it, because we're getting a fair amount of overtime and added time on for your team. So we'll figure that out.
Consider that. And I think we don't want to burden the normal council meeting with this. So if we can't do it every month, that's fine. We'll just lengthen out the process.
No worries. Okay, doodle, here it comes. We'll see where it goes. All right. Anything else, anyone, for the agendas or any anything that I'm obviously missing here? Tom?
Hello, AWC is putting on a presentation tomorrow at 11:30 called Roles, Responsibilities, and Legal Requirements for Municipal Governments. I know you're all busy. I'm putting it on. If you're interested in watching it, you'll get a sense of my view on municipal government and the relationship between mayor and council. So 11:30 tomorrow, late notice, but if you want to watch it, might give you an insight in the way I look at government.
Thank you. And good job for the self-plug.
Well, I don't
Well,
get it.
we'll take it. So at this transition, again, I want to thank wholeheartedly Steve DiGiulio for stepping in as our interim attorney. I know you and Kenan really have done a lot of work for us in the last couple of months, and I'm very, 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 very grateful. You are such an expert, and I just have such respect for you and your knowledge. So I know and hope that our paths will cross in the future. And Tom, I'm just very much looking forward to having you join our family and help us as we're just trying to do the best we can for our city, and looking forward to your wisdom and helping us get there. So good job, everybody. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any
Third,
discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose? Yeah, unanimously will adjourn. Thank you one and all. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.